shortcomings or disabilities will be avoided. Okay? But in the end, of course, if the risk, of course, of both parents or either parents is so high, but still the couple's decision, of course, to have children is yes. Therefore, we have to respect the one. But again, they are guided already with the fact, of course, that their probability of having offspring that might be having, of course, some congenital difficulties will be very high. So that's why later on in pregnancy, we're going to talk in the next part, of course, of our concept, that again, sometimes during these times, these couples, of course, are recommended for the next best thing. Okay? Either parental surrogacy, meaning to say they might be, of course, their thing, or probably adoption. Okay? But again, it will get them be defective. Another one, maternal factors, conditions during pregnancy or childbirth, it is considered as acquired. So if it is acquired, what are these things that we're going to choose? So again, the biggest concept of your teratogens. Okay? Teratogens is anything in the environment of the mother that is, the mother is exposed. It could be medication. It could be, of course, radiation in the environment. Or even, shall we say, of course, diseases that the mother is exposed that has a negative impact, of course, to the pregnancy or the fetus. We call them teratogens. And that is, of course, the main focus, of course, of our thing in order to prevent, of course, children who will be born with congenital difficulties. Yes?
When I was reading the chapter, when I was reading, I went through and it said maternal factors that they were doing for genital disorders. Is there such thing as maternal factors for genital disorders, or there's not?
You're genetic. Let's speak of genetic, half and half.
Half and half. Right?
Half and half.
Okay.
Although the thing is that is, of course, genetic. There's nothing we can do about it.
Because when I was reading the chapter, it all said maternal.
Because it is the woman's body who can impregnate. If there's a man, then hopefully we'll gladly, of course, maintain our health to get pregnant. The only thing is that when the fetus develops, it is, of course, the maternal side. Just imagine for that one, whatever is exposed to the mother's body will be exposed to the child, to the fetus. That's why it's maternal factors. But again, if you are asked maternal factors, yes, that's why we have genetics. The example for that one, autosomal dominant. If the father, of course, has Tay-Sachs disease, eventually the child has Tay-Sachs. Those are the things that we cannot avoid. Indeed, if the couple, of course, wanted to have pregnancy, okay? This is why the biggest thing, of course, in pregnancy is that in prenatal care, usually we want, of course, the couple to visit, of course, the OB first before they get pregnant, so they will be guided. Because the first thing that we're going to recommend, of course, for this couple is to visit, of course, a genetic counselor. A genetic counselor will be trying to, of course, to map their risks. And then if that risk is high, then they will be presented with their choices. But it means, of course, that they are informed. So whatever, of course, if they decided to be pregnant, then it is, of course, their decision. Okay? But yes, maternal factors plays a vital role because especially in genetics. Okay?
Even if the mother is healthy and the father does
What do you mean?
alcohol. Like if the mother doesn't do anything.
Alcohol is genetic. Just to let you know. There is, of course, a gene in alcoholism, of course. For example, you, as a parent, even if you are, for example, if the child is born is adopted, if the biological parents are alcoholic, it runs in the genes. So alcoholism, of course, is genetic.
What about drugs? If the mother doesn't use drugs and the pregnancy,
what kind of drugs?
let's say cocaine.
Okay.
And the father, who was pregnant, the woman was cocaine addict. Is that possible that child can be born as a drug addict child?
Cocaine was not, of course, documented, of course, to affect the sperm. Remember, the donation only of the father is sperm.
Right, the sperm, right. So,
You get it? So if there's a defective gene, of course, in the sperm, or physiological dysmorphology, because the sperm, that will be affecting, of course, the fetus. But shall we see the father is having cocaine? And the important one is that as long as there's a sperm, if the sperm is capable of impregnating the egg, there's nothing, of course, to worry about that one. Okay, do you get what I mean? So, because that is, of course, it doesn't affect genetically. Cocaine doesn't affect genetically. And again, cocaine addiction is a primarily genetic. Besides alcoholism, because alcoholism is genetic.
So the alcoholism, if the father is also alcoholic and besides genetic, and the mother also consume alcohol when the child is...
What's the worst thing the mother will do to the child?
The fetal alcohol syndrome is going to be, it's basically from the mother.
Yes, because during the pregnancy, during the development, of course, of the child, which we're going to talk a lot as we go along. That's why maternal factors, because again, why? we try, of course, to make sure, of course, that pregnancy is smooth sailing. And again, we provide resources. The only way to provide enough resources, both nutrition and environmental resources for the child to grow healthy and to develop healthy, is, of course, managing the environment of the mother.
Because when I was reading the book, I was having the same thing that she was discussing. I looked at everything is based on the mother.
Mm-hmm.
Because
they're growing. So,
after the child is conceived, now
just like, for example, this one. So sperm and egg met. Okay? Bingo, boom. There's a sudden explosion. You know the kind of explosion. Silent, but very fatal. Okay? Explosion, there's fertilization. Just imagine, of course, from fertilization, which we're going to talk as we progress, of course, the life, of course, of the ovum that is fertilized. So shall we say it will then form, of course, into a morula until such time that it will be a zygote, until it will become an embryo. The first 8 weeks, of course, of the life of this fertilized egg is very critical. That's why the first 8 to 12 weeks of pregnancy, okay, is, we call that one critical period of development. Again, you have to provide a good environment for that egg, of course, for implantation. You have to provide proper nutrition so that, again, the amniotic, the chorionic villi, of course, of that developing embryo, we're going to make sure, of course, to access enough nutrients. Okay? So just imagine, if the mother is not aware during the 8 to 12 weeks period of time, which is very, very critical, that is, of course, usually the start of this congenital disorder. That's why we're talking mother, because they're the one who is getting pregnant. Okay? And a lot of women are not aware that they are pregnant during this period. Okay, so because of that one, maternal factor is very important. That's why later on, the concept of pregnancy and the pregnancy health is a very, very big, of course, topic because it has a great impact. The only thing is that this impact, of course, transcends, of course, in the congenital disorders. And again, most of these congenital disorders, once they have damage, okay, if usually, of course, they are permanent. So unless otherwise, it could be corrected with surgical intervention. But most of this one, if it's intellectual impairment, it is irreversible. Okay? Okay. So genetic study of research, that's why we said, of course, that experiment ovocells, of course, wanted to pair with the joint together, we create, of course, a new baby, okay? Genetic disorders, it could be physical, mental abnormality resulting in defect in the genetic structure. So again, it could be either X-linked, autosomal. Remember, 3 forms of genetic anomalies. One, that is, of course, congenital, okay? First one, autosomal dominant. So we need to say, when we speak of autosomal dominant, either one of the parent, of course, we're talking of the parent, we're talking of the biological parents, of course, of this child. Either one of them, we're going to have, of course, the gene. The child will spontaneously, of course, develop, of course, the disease, okay? Autosomal recessive, meaning to say the child has to get one from the mother and one from the father, which is, of course, a pair. Before they could, of course, suffer the disease. Okay? That is why in the autosomal dominant, usually, of course, some of them end up with carriers. It's very hard, of course, to detect. And again, the X-link. In the way we speak of X-link, the defect is expressed, of course, in either the sex chromosomes, with their commonly, of course, in the X. Okay? Therefore, of course, usually this is why when we speak, of course, of X, expressed in X, or X-linked. Meaning to say, of course, that the defect is in the X. It is not in the Y. The only problem is that if the man is affected for the one, they will be greatly affected because they don't have an extra X. Unlike women, they have double X. They have extra X, of course, to compensate the loss, of course, of the capacity of the other X. But not, of course, with the male because they are possessing XY chromosome. So you don't have any extra X. That's why the defect primarily appears, of course, in males. Okay? So resulting in defective structure, of course, in genes. So there are called, of course, neurofibromatosis. Okay, in neurofibromatosis, of course, is this the condition, of course, that develop that will be destroying, of course, the central nervous system of the child. Tay-Sachs disease, very common among Jewish ascendancy. Okay, cystic fibrosis. We talk about cystic fibrosis later on. Exocrine, of course, plugging or drying the exocrine glands, wherein the child, of course, mucus, of course, is blocked, or the mucus glands or exocrine glands, just like your sweat glands, digestive gland, or the exocrine pancreatic functions, the GI tract, even the lungs are affected. Okay? So another one is hemophilia. Hemophilia, of course, is deficiency, of course, in blood clotting factor, which, of course, is another, of course, example, of course, of congenital genetic disorders. Sickle cell anemia. So when we speak, of course, of sickle cell, this is an inherited, of course, and a condition. So another one is PKU, phenylketonuria. This is a genetic defect, of course. It is through genes. Okay? The child has nothing to do with what is not even the pregnancy. It is, of course, the defective gene that is possessed by the parents. Okay? Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which we'll be talking later, are already, of course, coded in the genes. Okay? That's why we have genetic engineering to identify, of course, all those faulty genes, of course, that will be inherited by the child. If the child inherits those genes, there will be a likelihood, of course, that they will develop this disease. Okay? Diagnosis for this one, defect detected prenatally through amniocentesis. In amniocentesis, of course, usually what we are doing is that we insert, of course, a very long needle in the amniotic sac. The amniotic sac is the fluid wherein, of course, the fetus, okay, is swimming through. The purpose for that one is to provide warmth in the developing fetus. And the other one is that usually, of course, the amniotic fluid is the one that there's a sudden gush of water or the bag of water that explodes when the baby comes out. We call that one amniotic sac. So in amniocentesis, we get, of course, some fluids for that one, and then again, we have to check that one for the presence, of course, of alpha-fetoprotein. Alpha-fetoprotein, of course, is a very significant thing because if it is increased, okay, it means to say, of course, that there is, of course, a possible, of course, abnormality. The most common one is neural tube defects. With respect to neural tube defects, meaning to say the spina bifida thing. So again, usually, of course, common here in America, because sometimes we have a form of therapeutic abortion, and abortion is legal. Usually, of course, if it is, of course, during the first trimester, and then the child is severely defective, usually the recommendation of the OB will be, would you forego the child? Because the child is usually, of course, a lot of defect. So usually, abortion will be recommended for the woman. Okay? And again, the decision, of course, to abort a baby during the first trimester is still the woman's decision. Okay? If they want to forgo, then they're going to forgo with the rest, but at least they are informed. That's why, as early as possible, process of AFP, high level of AFP or alpha-fetoprotein is very significant, of course, study, okay, in order to check that the child doesn't have any abnormality. If you forgo, another one for that one is that, and the next thing, of course, that we could do, this is early testing, and later on, as the organs is developing, we next, of course, to do ultrasonography. The first one is through the vaginal, and we're going to talk about it one, for fetal viability, and another one, ultrasonography, we're going to check if you have problems, of course, do we have four-chamber heart? Do we have two kidneys? Do we have, of course, brain developing properly? So those are the things that we can see through ultrasonography, so that, again, intervention early for that one will be, of course, done, okay? So, chromosomal studies suspect genetic disorder, blood tests, and further studies, amniocentesis will be very, very, very important, of course, in order to detect early, okay, what is, of course, the status, of course, of the child, if the child possesses any genetic disabilities or disorders. Okay. So, genetic counseling, as I've said, is the most common thing, of course, is that it is recommended, of course, for this couple, married or not, as long as they want, of course, children, to go for a genetic counselor. The counselor takes individual or couple genetic profiles, the health history, of course, of both parents, any history, of course, any history of miscarriages, birth defects, the cause of death of the family members, employment, ethnic background. Employment is very important because exposure to the environment could cause, of course, teratogenic problems or exposures, okay? Ethnic backgrounds, because believe it or not, there's some ethnic, of course, groups that are morely affected. Like, for example, in Tay-Sachs disease, that's very commonly observed, of course, for Jews or Jewish ascendancy, okay? So ethnic backgrounds, exposure to toxins. So what are the, besides, of course, employment, what are the toxins that are involved with the mother? Because again, remember, so exposure for this one, of course, will be making, of course, the woman's temple, okay, to be, of course, altered and could cause or could inflict negative factors, of course, for the developing fetus, okay? So again, education regarding genetics, how disorders are inherited. So again, the topic, of course, of autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, and X-linked disorders, of course, will be, of course, discussed here. And the risk, of course, for genetic disorders and information so person couple can make decisions for a preventive health care that strives to prevent health defects. This is, of course, the stress that we are pushing. So that, again, even if it is more, the next generation, of course, we have a lesser, of course, genetic anomalies, wherein, of course, these children, of course, will be that will be produced. At least they have, of course, little risk or low risk, of course, for these developing genetic disorders, genetic disorders, indicated for adults with known genetic disorders. So sometimes it is healthy, okay? The only thing for that one is that during sex, our behavior during sex, we don't care, okay? So in the most common thing, this combination is alcohol, either alcohol or drugs, coupled with sex. Especially if your behavior as you if you drink alcohol, you become, of course, you lose your inhibition, you become wild. And if you become wild, you forget about protections or safety, precautions. Okay? So all of these people, it makes people tendency, of course, to be exposed in unprotected sex. Meaning to say, when I speak of unprotected sex, I'm not talking about STI, but again, protection against pregnancy. So this is why we have a lot, of course, of babies. Again, 80% of Americans are born by accident. Okay? So acquired, as I said, we have teratogens, and the number one teratogens will be alcohol. At this point in time, what is, of course, for example, could you drink while you're pregnant? What is, of course, the safe alcohol level for a pregnant woman? 0. Always remember that. 0. There will never be. Okay? So again, drugs, maternal diseases, toxic substances, because again, these are body cholesterol teratogens. So again, any factor exposed to the mother, when we speak of exposed to the mother, either the mother is exposed, the mother takes it in, or the mother suffers. These are the teratogens. So meaning to say, is rubella a teratogen? Is rubella a teratogen?
Yes.
Definitely, that's one of the most highly teratogenic disease we ever known, because it will produce a rubella syndrome. Okay? So teratogens that women uses or comes into contact with are known to cause a wide range of fetal abnormalities. That's why our drug handbook says that we have pregnancy category risk A, B, C, D, and again, the one that cannot be used, X. Okay? So that's one thing. Other causes will be trauma, just like if during the pregnancy there will be some trauma accidents to the mother that again inhibits, of course, the resources of the fetus, just like nutrients. Okay? What's inhibited, of course, to be exposed, of course, to the child. Another one is that anoxia, meaning to say the supply of oxygen of the baby, if it is affected, of course, while the baby is inside, could cause a teratogenic effect, of course, to the mother. Maternal malnutrition is a big thing. That's why maternal nutrition is another big area, of course, in prenatal care. Okay? Because again, why? The nutrients, of course, that the mother, of course, is supplying the baby comes from her food. That's why it is not the amount that we're talking, it is the quality, of course, of the food that the mother takes in order for of course, the baby, of course, to get a healthy source, of course, of nutrients. Okay? First thing is that your fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASDS. So this is a general term that will be called for any baby, of course, that is born. Again, in any age the baby is exposed to alcohol, there will be the negative impact. Okay? The earlier the exposure of alcohol, the graver or the severe, okay, the damage will be, or the anomaly will be, or the defect. And again, all the defects affecting the child that are secondary, of course, to the influence of alcohol cannot be repaired. Or shall we say, it is irreversible. So therefore, the question will be, what is the treatment of fetal alcohol spectrum disorders? None. The child will going to stay that way. So whatever level of function the child will. Okay? Let us see. If we were going to expose the child, of course, to alcohol, what will happen? Wide range of physical, mental, behavioral, learning disabilities. Okay? Directly related to maternal consumption of alcohol during pregnancy, preventable if mother does not consume alcohol during pregnancy. Okay? So there are two things. If you drink alcohol, don't engage in sex. But take a look. Reality. Check. If you engage in alcohol, you lose your inhibition, and there we go. Okay? So FAS, severe form of FASD, or fetal alcohol syndrome, is the most severe. Sometimes we have ARMD, or alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorders, functional or mental health problems, meaning to say there's some limitation in terms, of course, of mental capacity or functional capacity the child has. Or your ARBD, alcohol-related birth defects. It will be a birth defect. Again, that's on the physical defect, but again, it does not, of course, probably, of course, include the functional or mental health problems the child has. Okay? So, it could be birth defects affecting the heart, the kidneys, the bones, of course, or hearing. So, meaning to say, alcohol, of course, will have dramatically negative effect, of course, to the baby, regardless of age. Okay? So birth defects due to alcohol can occur anytime during pregnancy. That's why there is no good time, of course, to have alcohol during pregnancy. My greatest concern, of course, is the first 8 to 12 weeks of pregnancy, where the woman is not aware. Okay? Now the question will be is that if a woman is aware that she's pregnant, the worst thing sometimes for alcoholics is that, remember, alcoholism is a disease. Okay? The woman, the most common first response, don't worry about my drinking. I can manage it. I can stop it anytime I want. That's, of course, the most common response, which, of course, we understand as denial. Again, if you are alcoholic, usually, based, of course, on the studies and based, of course, on the facts, okay, you have to admit you are alcoholic and you are powerless. against alcohol. That is why the first step to Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program, if you will be, of course, enrolled in that kind of program, you will say, I am Lirio and I am alcoholic. I'm helpless. Okay? I'm helpless against alcohol. It means to say you acknowledge that you have the disease. That's the first step. You acknowledge your weakness and you cannot do otherwise by yourself for that one. That's why you need some help. Okay? That's one thing. Effects of alcohol, the fetus is irreversible. Abstinence is the only way, safe way, of course, to prevent, of course, alcohol-related congenital anomalies, of course, to the child. Let's speak abstinence, no drinking of alcohol, even red wine. Okay? Another one thing is that including drinks or beverage that contains alcohol. Okay? So, and one of the most common is that the facial abnormalities. The most common facial abnormalities will be small head, microcephaly. Okay? But as you can see later on is that the structure, of course, of facial abnormality is that we have, of course, deformed. Up to the worst thing, of course, that I saw is that the patient, of course, the patient developed without a cheekbone, the baby. Okay? Because, of course, of fetal alcohol syndrome. So again, one of the biggest thing that the first you are going to see, of course, is cranial, the head or the brain, facial abnormalities or malformation. So either they are microcephaly, very small head, small brain, or another one is that the structure of the face or flat, of course, face, flat nose, of course, or anything, of course, that is, of course, in the face. So craniofacial abnormalities are the most commonly observed, of course, problems. The first thing that you see, growth retardation, meaning to say their failure, of course, to acquire, to achieve, of course, enough growth. Developmental delays, meaning to say at probably, of course, 2 years old, they can still walk. Or probably at 2 years old, they can still speak. Okay? So another one is that below normal mental function, meaning to say they have intellectual disabilities. So their IQ level is very low. Okay? So dysfunction of the central nervous system, it might be, of course, that they could have seizure disorders. They could have, of course, another one permanent thing, cerebral palsy, which, of course, a problem, of course, both with the neuromuscular structures, of course, of the child, that they cannot control movements. Okay? Which we're going to talk later on. So maternal history, of course, will be following characteristic of behavior in the child, small for gestational age, meaning to say the normal, of course, weight, of course, for the child when the child is born is between 5 to 9 pounds, or 5 to 8 pounds. Just imagine if we have small for gestational age, these are babies who are born below that, meaning to say they are small. The smaller the child when they are born, the lesser the chances of survival of the fetus or of the newborn. That's why it is important, of course, not the baby, that the baby, of course, could be, of course, in a bracket of weight before the baby is delivered. We don't want the baby to be giant, just like greater than 9 pounds or 10 pounds, because again, that's macrosomia, and again, the baby might have a difficulty during birth. And the only fast possible delivery, of course, for the child is through cesarean section or C-section. Unlike, of course, within the weight, it could be, of course, allowed to be delivered through a vagina. Okay? Another thing for that one is that the child, of course, might be having very, very low birth weight. And again, this small for gestational age is very, very common, of course, as an effect, of course, of alcohol. Another one, as I have said, microcephaly. Micro meaning to say small brain. So do you think, of course, if you have a, that's why there's the most common bullying term, you fish head. Okay? So meaning to say if you have fish head, so you have a small brain. It means to say you are so dumb. Okay? So that's the thing, because microcephaly, so a small brain, of course, cannot accommodate a higher function. So because of that one, intellectual disabilities is very common, abnormal facial features. So again, craniofacial, as I have said in other books, says craniofacial abnormalities, sleep and sucking abnormalities, and infancy, meaning to say they have problems with sleeping. Okay? In sucking, meaning to say they cannot suck effectively in order to feed themselves, in order, of course, to provide enough calories for their system. Extreme irritability. Either they will be having seizures, or they might be having, of course, hyper-irritability, meaning to say they're so sensitive, of course, with stimuli that they cannot rest. One of the most common thing for that one is that in these children is that with extreme hyper-irritability is that they have a very profound moral reflex. Okay? So when we speak of moral reflex, it's known to the starting reflex, that when you of course start up the baby will gonna be creating a C position for her arms, okay? Just like the baby is trying to, of course, to hug the caregiver who did it, okay? Another one, eye and ear defects. So meaning to say, the ear defects, hearing difficulties, and visual difficulties for children with the alcohol, okay? So this is one, of course, of the worst, of course, effect of the baby. And again, highlight for that one is that this effect is great and permanent. The only way No. The only way, of course, to handle it is to prevent. That's why we have to do a massive education against pregnancy and alcohol. And then when they are born, because of course our laws stipulates, of course, that we have to support these children, these special children. A lot of our tax money goes to this one. We don't negate for that one, for those children who are born. But do you want, of course, to add again, of course, to the liability of the society? That's why the goal for that one will be, as much as possible, we try to limit, of course, children who are born with this. Okay? Heart defects, so sometimes we have your congenital heart defects, impairment in the fine motor abilities, poor coordination. So this might be, of course, a little bit, of course, they might be developing cerebral palsy, poor organ and bone development, developmental disabilities, meaning to say when we speak of developmental disabilities, they don't reach, of course, the standards. Of course, expected, of course, developing to that specific period, of course, of age. Short attention span, meaning to say children who are fetal alcohol is that short attention span, they might have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is, of course, a behavior or psychological, of course, deviation, of course, to the normal behavior of these children. Okay? Could ADHD be produced, of course, out of fetal alcohol syndrome? Yes, they could. Okay? Hyperactive behavior. This too, short attention span and hyperactive behavior are the characteristics, of course, of a child having attention deficit hyperactivity disorders. Okay? So learning disabilities, so when we speak of learning disabilities, their IQ might be very low. So that's why the term here is mental retardation, we change it, of course, to intellectual difficulty or disability. Problem adjusted to daily living. Therefore, even their common sense is very low. So if they have problems, of course, with memory deficit learning, so do you think they can handle more complex responsibilities? That's the thing. So poor judgment and reasoning skills. So again, as much as possible, we try to educate them, train them to be useful, to be productive. But again, how much more you can train, of course, a child who uphold these disabilities? Okay, the only thing, of course, the answer for that one, prevent children having these conditions. Okay, and that is, of course, refrain, of course, from having sex if you're drinking. So again, always advocate, what would you like to do, drink or sex? Okay, so pick one. Okay. The advocacy, of course, I've been presenting, I might be so vulgar in my thinking, of course, but that's one thing. But the only thing you could avoid, party, okay, here's yours, okay. The drink. Okay, even if the woman sometimes is not aware that somebody, of course, is presenting or introducing his sperm to her. That's a bad thing. So the first thing is that early recognition, refer to the support services. Medical management of the condition is like seizures. That's the only thing we could do. If they have seizures, so we have, of course, with seizures. But again, other, of course, results will be permanent. Counseling and emotional support, surgical repair, especially for the heart defects. Okay? No cure exists. No cure. Clear. No cure. Symptomatic only management. If they have surgical repair that's needed, okay, do surgery. If they have medical conditions like seizure, they have epilepsy, then it should be managed, of course, by anti-seizure medication. But again, could it change the fact, of course, that they have AS? No. Okay. Early identification and provide education regarding dangers of consuming alcohol during pregnancy. Okay? So, why does women become pregnant? These are things that provide education regarding dangers of consuming alcohol during pregnancy, which is true. But again, why not, of course, that if you have, of course, the potential, or you have the potential to get pregnant, never touch alcohol. Okay? When you're no longer pregnant, okay, or you tie your tubes, drink alcohol according to your want. But not to the point, of course, that you're at risk, of course, from being pregnant. Okay? Pregnant woman to stop drinking, peer family support. And again, if we encourage. But again, if a woman is alcoholic, there's nothing that we can do with it on, but again, the woman to be institutionalized. And God forbid. But again, these are the most common effects. Okay? But believe it or not, there are some, of course, children who are born to alcoholic mother that they don't have any difficulties. We call that miracle, probably, or probably, of course, the baby, of course, has different form, of course, of metabolism that they could do, of course, alcohol. But again, most commonly, almost 100%. Only a few segment of the population that are not affected, but most of these children are totally affected, and those irreversible damage. So any drink containing alcohol can damage the fetus. So again, all of these things, take a look. A 4-ounce glass of wine, it is red wine, white wine, whatever. A standard 12 ounces of glass of beer, 12 ounce beer. 12 ounces is how many ml? 1 ounce is how many ml?
30.
30 times 12 equals? 360. 360, just one, of course, long, of course, beer, okay? And 1 ounce of shot straight liquor, 1 ounce of course is 30 ml, okay? 30 ml of straight vodka, okay? Or probably, of course, whatever you want agave juice. Wine coolers, malt beverages, and mixed drinks can generally contain alcohol, so avoid, of course, this one. Do things that you have to try to avoid. Sugar, too much sugar and alcohol. This is a child, poor child. You see the feature? He looks normal, but take a look at the head. The one of the feature, of course, is that flat forehead, okay? And of course, the brain or the head, of course, is very small. Microcephaly and flat, of course, facial features. These are typical, of course, of the fetal alcohol syndrome child, as you can see, of course, in your book. Okay? Just imagine, how about, of course, the worst thing is that you don't have a cheekbone. This is flat here. And the worst thing problem is that the child will be developing without a jaw. Okay? If indeed the child, of course, will be born with that kind of course of difficulty. Okay? Another one, that's alcohol. So again, the answer for that one is that prevent alcohol, because again, what are the effects of alcohol? First of all, the most common one, of course, that we observe will be craniofacial. Okay? Could we have visual difficulties or could we achieve blindness with alcohol?
Yes.
Could we have hearing difficulties or hearing loss?
Yes.
Okay. So could we have seizure activities?
Yes. Yes.
Could we have attention hyperactivity disorders with the fetal alcohol syndrome children?
Yeah.
Yes, those are of course the symptoms. Okay. A lot of course, could we have cerebral palsy symptoms in a child with fetal alcohol syndrome? The answer is yes. So again, those are the effects of course of the child with alcohol. Okay? So another one is neonatal abstinence syndrome. What is neonatal abstinence syndrome? These are the babies now born with a different form of teratogens, although the effect for the one, of course, will be different to one than alcohol, although alcohol is the number one, of course, it is teratogenic. Okay? This one is that signs in newborn or anticipate. What are the neonatal abstinence syndrome? What are these children? What is neonatal abstinence syndrome? No. Microcephaly is one of the manifestations, of course, on the others of fetal alcohol. But again, neonatal abstinence syndrome are children or babies, of course, who are born in newborns who are having problems because, of course, of the fact that the mother is drug users, of course, or the one, of course, that they are using, of course, different form of drugs, especially narcotics. The one, of course, of their cocaine. Okay? Cocaine addict, crack babies. Sometimes we call them crack babies. Okay? So, more intensified with the drug use close to birth. That's why if the mother is addict, always remember, this is the mantra, if the mother is addict and the baby is inside, you expect the baby to be an addict too. Because the baby is using whatever the mother is using. Okay? So, if the mother is a crack, what do you expect of the baby? Crack. Now, the problem is that when the baby is born, you cut off, of course, the umbilical cord. What's happening? The baby is not receiving the drugs anymore. The drug level, of course, in the baby system is low. Therefore, one important thing is that you will observe neonatal abstinence syndrome, wherein the newborn is undergoing a severe withdrawal syndrome.
Seizures.
Typical. You will going to have seizures because, again, see, that's one thing. Even alcohol withdrawal, you will have seizures. Okay. So another, especially in alcohol withdrawal, so that's one thing, okay? How much more, of course, if you have, of course, been using, of course, these drugs. More intensified with the drug use, irritability, meaning to say, they are hyper-irritable. Baby will be screaming, crying, of course, probably high-pitched cry, because of the fact, of course, that they are so irritable, okay? Tremors, you can see, of course, tremors as a manifestation of withdrawal. Hyperactive motor reflex, that's one the same, is that a little bit, of course, of jarring, a little bit, of course, of sounds, will going to cause them, of course, to tremble. Okay? Up to the point that trembling, of course, could proceed, of course, up to, of course, the point that the child could go into seizures. Okay? Poor feeding in child, cognitive impairment, behavioral disorders, learning disabilities, attention deficit. So again, the effect for this one is that the only great difference is that this children has cognitive behavioral disorders and learning disabilities, attention deficit. Okay? Do you see it? In alcohol, this is present, plus you have physical difficulties, physical features. Here, of course, in drugs, the baby look like, of course, normal. But again, the effect, of course, in the cognitive, in the behavioral disorders will be there. Okay? That's why you will going to see later on, why are these children, of course, going to follow instructions? Or why these children, of course, has a very deviant antisocial behavior? Because, of course, the effect for this one, especially if the mother is a crack addict. Yeah? Diagnosis, maternal history. That's why we are doing drug screening now for the mother, okay, and the newborn, as we do the hospital, okay. Documentation characteristics behavior of the addicted newborns. Treat, for one of the things that treat infection. Why we see the post-treat infection? Because the mother who is an addict, of course, could be using, is not taking care of her own body. One of the most common the thing, of course, is that this woman might be using her body, okay, to acquire drugs. Okay? So sexually transmitted infection is very common. It could be exposed, of course, to the newborn. That's why treated infection, if ever there is. Postnatal checkups help mothers stop using drugs, meaning to say rehabilitate the mother. Okay? And if there is, of course, this condition, usually, of course, the social service, if the mother is identified as a severe addict, the baby is, of course, will be removed from the custody of the mother until the mother, of course, will be proof that she is clean. So that's why this thing is, of course, that the responsibility of the mother will be removed until such time, of course, that the mother will be mandated by the court to undergo rehabilitation. Only until such thing, because we can prove, of course, that she's been rehabilitated, she could get, of course, the full custody, of course, to the child. So that's why we have a no custody debarment, because again, the mother is deemed, okay, incompetent in taking care of the child. Okay? Nutritional support and education to promote growth and healthier lifestyle for the mother in order, of course, for them, of course, to recover from this. So provide care and support. Again, gentle but minimum handling. Do not touch the baby. Why? The baby is hyper-irritable. When we speak, of course, of hyper-irritable, a little touch, a little, of course, of stimulation, they will going to be, of course, has a profound response, just like no reflex, and the worst thing is that seizure activity. Okay? So swaddling, rocking, using pacifiers are very, of course, effective use when speaking of swaddling. Do you know what is swaddling? How do we swaddle a baby?
With those thin blankets.
Huh?
With the thin blanket and wrapper.
Okay, so usually, of course, that one way, of course, is that we mummify the baby. So we need to say we wrap the baby all around in order for the baby, of course, to feel secure. In order, of course, swaddling makes, of course, the baby feel secure. So swaddling is an important thing. And then when we wrap, always remember, later on, the highlight, of course, of rocking, always remember, it should be, what kind of rocking? Do not shake the baby side to side. The rocking will be back and forth, back and forth. That's why rocking chair is very, very effective, of course, to handle this one. Because again, side to side, of course, shaking of the baby, of course, could cause hyperstimulation. Only rocking will be, of course, back and front, back and front. Okay? Always remember that. Decrease environmental stimulation, because again, what it will lead to a full-blown seizure activity in the neonate. Narcotics, most newborns face long-term social, physical, emotional, mental challenges. Community resources, families, of course, needed. There are the people, the kids, of course, that even if they are going to school, they might, of course, have the tendency, of course, to be doing the negative stuff, the negative things, because of the fact, of course, that they are trying, of course, to compensate with their deficiency. Sometimes they don't have, of course, the capacity to tolerate, of course, more learning, because in the first place they have problems, of course, with the cognitive function. Okay? Okay. Substance abuse is one of the most common causes of cognitive impairment. The physical disabilities in children, behavioral psychological problems may result. So this is most common. At least the effect for the body might be physical changes, of course, will result, but this is not great as alcohol. Okay? But again, the only thing for that one is that the worst thing, of course, with this neonatal abstinence syndrome, or babies, of course, born, of course, to addicted mothers, is that they will be growing with behavioral issues as well as cognitive. Meaning, they're learning they have learning deficits. Another one thing is that their behavioral issues, of course, will be, of course, manifesting as they grow forward. Okay? So again, take a look of our brothers and sisters, of course, especially in the south side, especially, of course, here in our state, in Chicago area, we plant, of course, even marijuana, isn't it? We have plantations before that has been seen, of course, around this one, and the drug use, of course, in the world country is so high. Okay? So as a matter of fact, right now we have already the legalization, of course, on use of cannabis, okay, for pain purposes, and another alternative, of course, as a management, of course, for people who are in pain. Okay? So because of the illegal use of drugs, of course, are still a reality in the society because of the fact, of course, that there's a big money, of course, involved. We know that. Okay? So the only thing is some concern is here, so if you're adults, you're using your life, so be it. But at least that's your potential. How about, of course, for the baby, of course, that's developing? It is not, of course, it don't want, of course, the burden, of course, the fetus to developing, of course, because of poor requirement. That's why I'm saying, if you are pregnant, don't drink and don't use this one. When you are done with the baby is born now, you go if you want to. And I don't care anymore. But the baby does not deserve, of course, to be born in the environment or developing in the environment that it will be unfair to them. So if you're an adult, you've been given a fair chance. It is your decision. Okay? Exposure to maternal infection. One, of course, first one will be toxoplasmosis. Okay? Another one will be the most common one, rubella syndrome. Okay? So long-term consequences for exposure to chickenpox and toxoplasmosis, mental retardation, microcephaly. Toxoplasmosis, again, cognitive impairment and, of course, deafness. Okay? Herpes simplex virus can cause seizures, paralysis, of course, in the newborn. So again, these are the most common teratogen, infectious teratogens that the mother could have during pregnancy. That's why if the woman is pregnant, we have, of course, an advanced way, of course, of protecting the woman from being exposed, especially, of course, for teratogenic infections. And what are those? Toxoplasmosis. Okay? What is toxoplasmosis? Where do we get it?
Chickenpox?
Be specific. Toxoplasmosis, chickenpox?
No. Or
I'm asking chicken. I'm not asking chickenpox. I'm asking toxoplasmosis. Where do we get it? Where did the mother get it?
genetic?
That is infection, Missy. Irrespective of infection, we need to say it is acquired. Is acquired, of course, as an infection. How would you protect a pregnant woman from toxoplasmosis? From the father. Does the father, of course, bear toxoplasmosis? So that you're telling, of course, the woman don't have sex with your husband during pregnancy because he has toxoplasmosis. Who said that?
She said.
What did you say? What are cats? Very good. Okay, Toxoplasma gondii, there's one. Okay? So that's one of the most common one. That's why when you are pregnant, the most common first question during the first prenatal, do you have cats? Do you have kittens, of course, at home? Did they not say, kill your kittens? No. The only thing is that, do not take care of the cats while you're pregnant. Because again, in cat feces, very good idea for that cat feces will be exposing their toxoplasma gondii. Okay? And toxoplasmosis could cause, of course, mental retardation in brain. Brain, of course, physical disability or brain malfunction. Okay? Or shall we say, of course, a physical deformity, of course, of the brain. Okay, so that's why cat, very good. And we're going to talk as we go along for this one where we could get this one, blah, blah, especially these teratogens, okay? Again, and another one is that exposure to drugs. Okay, very good. Another one, HIV. All babies who are born to HIV mothers will be HIV positive. True or false?
True.
All babies who are born to HIV positive mothers during pregnancy, HIV positive mothers, will be HIV positive. What is false? So what the question will be, what is, of course, the chances of the baby who is born or a woman who is, of course, HIV positive to be having HIV?
Is it because of the drugs that is easy?
My question is that statistically, for example, if a woman is HIV, what is the probability that the baby will going to have HIV? Because you said it's not 100%.
Oh, let me give that. Maybe they
No,
say.
I don't want maybe. I want specific
Okay. They
data.
say if you do the C-section, take the baby from up, not from normal delivery, then you don't get the baby will not get a chance to get HIV.
The number he's asking.
It could be. There's some studies that they're saying that what are the chances, of course, of exposure to HIV during HIV mother? Therefore, yes, I agree with you. Vaginal delivery, especially postpartum, especially if you don't cut already right away, of course, the umbilicus, especially during, of course, the placental separation, chances, of course, of exposing, of course, the baby to HIV or HIV human deficiency virus, of course, will be higher. Unlike, of course, when you do cesarean section, that you can cut already right away the umbilicus. Okay, that is true. But again, my question is besides the point. Do you get my point? If a woman is pregnant, how many percent of the chance of the baby to be born? Okay, shall we say the positive side, healthy?
If the woman has a counseling and testing,
HIV. No.
oh, the percentage, what's the percentage of the child is going to
So because again, the question is that if a woman is pregnant and she is positive for HIV again, I'm talking about only HIV positive because again, a different terminology will be AIDS mother. Okay? AIDS and HIV positive are two different things, which we're going to talk, of course, in immunology as we go with progress. But again, my question would be that are all babies, of course, born of mothers who are positive with HIV? Each HIV will be born to be positive with HIV? The answer is no. So now the question is, how in what is the percentage?
50.
It will be 50, but at least commonly, of course, it will be the range, of course, of 30 to 50%. In the most common book, that texture, of course, text will be, of course, 35%. Okay? So for every 100 babies born to mothers, of course, who are HIV positive, 35 or 30 to 50%, 30 to 50 babies, of course, will be HIV positive. Now, the question for this one is that fewer cases of pediatric HIV because, of course, we are using one form of drugs, Dovidin or AZT. Okay? Simana, take a look. If there's a probability of the baby to be pregnant, that is why women who are pregnant are encouraged for early identification and early treatment. AZT is the first drug to ever produce equivalent antiretroviral. It does not kill the virus, but it prevents the virus from populating, from producing more. Therefore, the lower the virus in the system of the mother, the lower the chances of the baby getting the HIV. Does HIV could cross the placenta? The answer is yes. So if the baby, of course, is having that. So again, usually, if we will start antiretroviral, take a look for this one. Okay? The baby is developing, of course, for this one is that the baby, of course, will be of course, less than 10%. To be specific, of course, is less than 2%. So from 30 babies up to only 2 babies per 100 pregnancy if we start with COVID. Okay? That is why in Africa, we're in a lot of course where brothers and sisters who are infected with HIV, encouraging them, of course, to receive, of course, medication is very important. Before 1 year of age, human immunodeficiency is immature infants positive with HIV, antigen less able to fight infection, and usually, of course, if they are HIV positive, usually they don't grow older because the this system, of course, will be collapsing. Okay?
So what's the percentage? Is it 30 or 35?
What is that?
The percentage that
I said, of course, 30 to 50, of course, for a wider range. 35 is the most common. 30 to 50% of the babies born of mothers who are HIV positive, not treated with antiretroviral, will get the disease. The 35, of course, is the most common number that the books will tell you. Okay? So at least 30 to 35% will be the magic number. But again, it could climb as to 30 to 50 babies out of 100 babies will be positive with HIV. Now, my bottom line is that that's the big number. Give them Zidovudin, antiretroviral, you are pulling them down, of course, to less than 2%. Do you get what I mean? What I'm trying, of course, advocating is that the significance, of course, of starting antiretroviral medication to a pregnant woman to prevent exposing it, of course, to the baby. And the concept of HIV, we're going to talk deeper as we go along for that one, okay? But I'm just giving you the statistics, okay? How more rapid is this progression if the baby is born HIV positive? Then they have rapid progression to until they will have a full-blown AIDS. Okay? So most children infected perinatally, AIDS diagnosed before the age of 4. Okay? And when HIV, they have delayed growth, failure to thrive, enlarged liver, lymphoid, and usually they don't, of course, thrive just like mature people who are having HIV. Okay? Bacterial sepsis, neurologic involvement, more common than adults. True or false? A baby or a human being could die with AIDS. I rephrase this. Human immunodeficiency virus could kill a human.
Yes.
Yes.
The answer is no. What is it? Pneumonia is the most common one that we're going to kill the patient. The effect for this one is that the immune system, they were going to kill the immune system up to the point that the immune system can no longer fight infection.
And then they get
Pneumonia is the most common one. And the most common one of pneumonia, we call that one as your pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, which usually a normal healthy individual could surpass, even without antibiotics. But if you have HIV, the pneumocystis carinii microorganisms will going to kill the patient. Even a flu infection could kill the patient. And it so happened the most common, it could be a lot. It could be, of course, meningitis. It could be, of course, but the most common and prominent would be the pneumonia. And the most most common one, very significant to HIV patients, pneumocystis carinii pneumonia. Okay, we're going to talk as we progress for it one, and I want, of course, to bring you deeper, of course, the concept of HIV/AIDS. But this one is that the only thing for that one is that we advocate is that screening for HIV, usually, of course, right now for pregnant women, is recommended by OBs. Okay, so then you have, of course, your HIV screen or HIV test, so that to know if indeed the mother has HIV, if the mother has HIV, an early intervention, of course, can be given to the mother for both the mother and the baby. So again, especially for the baby, to prevent exposure to the HIV, so that the chances of the baby of making it through out of the mother without having HIV positive, without being HIV positive, will be higher. Okay? So that's why we have some testing, two-tip test. EIA, or enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay. Right now it is EIA, or just enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, or EIA, instead of ELISA. And again, these things, of course, we're going to test, of course, exposure to the antibodies, okay? If we have, of course, retrovirus that is present, of course, in the system. If the system, of course, is exposed to the retrovirus, Western blot test is for confirmation. Meaning to say, ELISA or EIA is screening, and the Western blot is for confirmation. Indeed, it is HIV that is present in the system. Okay? So only Western blot could say that indeed that person is HIV positive. And believe it or not, our HIV status, of course, in our work is never revealed. But that is why you don't know the HIV status, the HIV status, of course, of your patient. It is not revealed commonly. Okay? Because of why? A regular, of course, standard precaution using gloves, of course, and all of your things could prevent you, of course, from exposing. And as a matter of fact, conceptually, it is not the patient. It is not the patient. It is not you who will be worried, of course, to get, of course, HIV from the patient. The patient who has HIV positive, who has already, shall we say, foot on AIDS, will be the one to be afraid of the main stream of population because they might get infection that will going to kill them. Okay? That's why in HIV, we put them, of course, in neutropenic or reverse isolation if their immune system is already damaged. Okay? The same is true, of course, for these children. Treatment given to HIV pregnant mothers, antibiotics. The antibiotic especially is, of course, to treat other infection, not, of course, the HIV. Just like your pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, the most common antibiotic that we are giving is trimethoprim sulfa or cotrimoxazole. Okay? So, treat opportunistic infections. Chickenpox, measles, otitis, upper respiratory tract, common illness can be deadly to children with HIV because, again, these children could be dead because their system cannot fight this infection. Okay. Breastfeeding by HIV mothers is contraindicated. Two things for breastfeeding. If the mother is HIV positive, no breastfeeding. If the mother is infected with PTB, pulmonary tuberculosis, breastfeeding is contraindicated. How much more with HIV? That's why? Because HIV could be shed through mother's milk. Okay? So again, be careful, of course, to suck a breast that has milk. Okay? It contains HIV. Important teaching concept, of course, use standard precautions by healthcare workers and family members because, again, you can avoid, of course, contact. And again, we know HIV could be only transmitted, of course, from the mother to the baby during pregnancy, during sex, or any introduction, of course, of hypodermic needles. Okay? Could you get HIV through saliva? I know infectious mononucleosis, Sanet. Could you get, again, where do you get HIV? How does HIV, of course, communicate it? Body fluids, just like cervical mucus or cervical secretions, as well as semen, blood, and body fluids. Okay? It contains, of course, HIV. Now, my question will be: Could you get HIV through saliva?
No. Yes. No.
Yes or no?
Yes. No.
So if you are kissing, of course, somebody who's HIV positive, could you get his HIV or her HIV?
Only if you have.
Because again, the reality is that when you're kissing somebody, deep French kissing, I'm talking about French kissing, where you are changing, you're of course having sword fight with your tongue, as well as we're sucking each other's tongue. Therefore, in the event, you are getting, of course, their saliva. My question will be, could you get HIV from them?
Yeah.
Who said yes? Who said no? Are you sure? Why?
Well, they said kissing you can't get. Why are you talking about? Okay, talking about French kissing, like kissing another.
I'm not talking about kissing the vagina. I'm kissing, of course, the lips. Okay, it's a different story. Because again, it might lead you, of course, for kissing the other side, of course, of the body. But again, I'm kissing, French kissing. That's why I like Sorry for my directness, okay? Because I will be talking it anyway. Because my concept will be saliva. Could you get it from saliva? Because the only way to get it from saliva will be, you're gonna tell a woman, come on, give me your saliva. Don't do that. You exchange it through kissing, isn't it? That's the normal thing that we do as a human being. So this is a question. Through the kissing, could you get, of course, HIV?
Well, they said when it first came out, they said, I think the doctor said you can't get it through the saliva, through kissing.
Although sometimes right now, oral cells could be utilized, of course, to skin. Mononucleosis, there's no question. That's the most number one, of course, disease that you can get, of course, through kissing. So I call it kissing disease. But HIV?
I would say no.
I say yes. Yes.
For you said no, might be, but the answer will be yes. Yes.
No, if you have a...
The big question is that you don't have any source and you don't want to kiss somebody with sore in the mouth, isn't it? Miss B? You don't want to kiss somebody with a sore in the mouth, isn't it? Even if it's your loved one, sorry. Okay? Forget about it. I want to, but okay, my mind is willing, but my flesh is weak. Okay? The answer will be yes if you suck 20 gallons of saliva. 20 liters of saliva. You have, of course, to suck and swallow 20 liters of saliva before you could get infected. That is why usually it is not, of course, commonly, as not a pathway, of course, unless you're a true, if there's a break in the skin, that we're going to be, of course, exuding, of course, all the blood components, okay? Clear. Okay. So body fluids, yes.
What was it? You said breastfeeding is contraindicated for HIV patients, and you said one more thing too.
PTB, tuberculosis.
Oh, okay, thank you.
TB.
Mm-hmm. TB is the most dreaded, and you know what? Americans are more afraid, of course, of TB than HIV. HIV, so weird. Intellectual impairment. So when speaking of intellectual impairment, your intellect. So meaning to say that child, of course, has a difficulty, of course, in learning, storing, of course, this information, and utilization of this knowledge. Okay? So again, if you're a nurse, I expect, if you are here in the front of me, I don't expect for you to have intellectual impairment. Because if you do, there's a problem with that one. I don't know how would you survive. Isn't it? So I expect, of course, your IQ to be, of course, above 80 at least. Okay? Again, intellectual impairment, individual intellectual impairment demonstrates below average intellectual abilities. Okay? Difficulty functioning independently. Test to determine degrees of intellectual impairment will be commonly, of course, that in children, especially 6 years old and up. Okay? We are using Wechsler Intelligence Scale for children. That's the Wechsler Intelligence Scale. And if you're adult, we are using, of course, your Stanford Bennett. This is, of course, the test for simple IQ. How do you compute your IQ? IQ is intelligence quotient, isn't it? And what is normal? IQ is equals to, first one is? Mental age over your chronological age. Times 100. Example. Let's compute, of course, on an IQ of a 7-year-old child. Shall we say his mental age of the child is 7 years old? His mental age. Mental age is computed by administering all this exam, Wechsler Intelligence Scale, for up to children up to 16 years of age. The target for this one is usually for 6 to 16 years of age. Okay? Stanford Bennett, above that one, above 16 for adults, usually we use Stanford Bennett. Okay? Do you know what is your IQ? Okay, so whatever. Okay, let's see later. So 7, shall we say a child who has 7 years, mental age of 7 years of age, as a result, of course, by the exam. And his actual or chronological age right now is 7 years old.
Times 10.
Equals 1 times 100.
Oh.
Therefore, the child's IQ is 100. And 100 is the normal. Okay? So if you have a 100 IQ, it means to say, of course, that you are behaving based, of course, on your age. So meaning to say, that's the normal, therefore you have the potential, of course, to learn. Even people, of course, that's why we try, of course, to educate, of course, as much as possible, is that for those people who are an IQ of 80 and above, okay, or 80 to 100, these are the later on, of course, is that the people, of course, that a little bit below, but again, still, they could be educated in the likes, okay? So again, there's a degree, of course, of intellectual impairment based, of course, on the IQ of the child, okay? Because again, this will limit, of course, their capacity to learn new stuff. Okay? Although that's what they said, of course, a lot of psychologists say that this is biased because of the fact, of course, that they are only focusing more on one form of intelligence. Okay? How about, of course, if the child, of course, has emotional intelligence? That's why we have what they call your emotional IQ or emotional quotient. Or if the child, of course, is gifted in music, therefore they might be, of course, having problems with other forms, but again, they might be excelling, of course, in music or in art. Okay, but again, here in IQ, it's only purely based, of course, on the knowledge of the child. Okay, past experiences, how they retain, of course, information, in the way, of course, they use, of course, that information to analyze questions that will reflect, of course, their mental age. Okay, so example for the child. Example: an 8-year-old child. Okay, shall we say the chronological age is 8, and shall we say the mental age of the child? We check the child. The child is only 4 years old. Even their chronological age, of course, why is it very important? Because later on, the trick for that one will be, we are gearing the child not on his chronological age. If the child, of course, is, shall we say, 18 years of age, and his mental age is 7, the way we treat the child will be 7 years of age. Because that's the only level, of course, that he could understand us. Okay? Although we know that sexually, that, of course, children with intellectual impairment is having normal functional, of course, sexual reproduction, okay, or development. But the mental age, the way we treat them, of course, is based on their mental age. Clear? Your treatment, of course, of the child will be based on the mental age. Example of a child, 8-year-old, the mental age is 4, divided, it will be 2. How come? 4 divided by 8, 2? 1/2 or 0.5. 0.5 times 100 equals 50. This child, of course, has intellectual impairment because the IQ is only 50. What is 50? Yeah. So standard quotient tests can predict work productivity, success, propriety. Factors influence scores will be a lot of other people. Minority, if you're a minority, your IQ level, of course, might be descend, of course, that a little bit low. And your culture, your racial factors, of course, will influence, of course, the IQ of the child. Okay? So again, levels of function, these are, of course, the based on the IQ. So again, borderlines, intellectual impairment. So if you have an IQ of 70 to 85, we call you, of course, borderline. Meaning to say, you could still be educated. The only thing is that you still have some difficulties. Okay? So if you have an IQ, of course, of 70 to 85, I don't know. But I want, of course, 85 and above. Okay? If your IQ is, you check, of course, and your IQ is 70, I think you will have difficulty in nursing. So I expect for you, of course, that you have 100 or above 100 IQ here. Okay? So able to function independently with the assistance of special education. There are the people that we call them slow learners, but they could be able, of course, to learn. Okay? Mild impairment will be mild. Mental retardation or mild intellectual disability will be the IQ between 50 to 70. Majority of the cognitively impaired children, these are the most common, of course, children who have intellectual disability. Okay? 50 to 70, as I have said, that's how we compute it. If they have 50, we call them mild impairment. They could still function, they could feed themselves. Okay? So that is the only thing is that they have limited, of course, limited way. But again, continuous and repeated training for them, at least they could acquire a certain level, of course, of independence. Again, the goal of care, even if they have, of course, physical and intellectual disabilities, the goal of care will be maximize their capacity to be independent. Okay? That's the goal. And the most focus will be how would they care for themselves. Self-care is a big thing, of course, for the child to acquire. Third one will be moderate impairment. It will be 30 to 50. Okay? Unable to function independently achieves, of course, only a mental age of 3 to 7 years of age. So if that will be, of course, the age, usually it's very, very hard. So there are always children. Okay? So this commonly, of course, the most common one that I observed with this one will be people, of course, who have Down syndrome. If they have, of course, moderate impairment, they could function, they could feed, they could eat, of course, but again, their way, of course, that's why they are already big, of course, but they are carrying, of course, their dolls or their baby toys, okay? Because they're, of course, stuck in the 3 to 7 years of age, intellectual capacity, okay? The next one is severe impairment. Severe impairment will be IQ of 20 to 35, requires great assistance with activities of daily living, brushing, eating, pooping. Sometimes people are going to poop up to the point, of course, that these children, of course, with intellectual impairment, of course, cannot be trained toilet. Okay? So sometimes they mess up even, of course, with their basic ADLs, activities of daily living, especially elimination. Okay? Can conform to daily routines, repetitive activities. But again, the most common one is that IQ falls below 20 or unable to test requires to complete the system with all aspects of daily life. We call this one as your custodial, meaning to say they need help. Okay? Feeding, everything, even moving. So they are what they call as your custodial, meaning to say they need somebody 24/7, of course, to care for them. Unlike, of course, this impairment, of course, of 20 to 35, so a little bit, of course, of function, but there and there they could function, but again, at least they are limited, they have repetitive activities. So bare babies. So another thing for this one is, as we go along, is that this, of course, this mental age, of course, the 35 to 50 still less than can train them as children. Okay, at 7 years of age. Okay. So the most common one before the terms that we are using would be IQ 20 to 35. We call them as your the terms before that we are using clinically. We change it. Children who have an IQ below 20 are called idiots. That's the term. As a matter of fact, sometimes you laugh because it was striking out, of course, clinically. In the 1960s to 70s, that was the term. The child is idiot. Meaning to say that our child has an IQ below 20. Okay, so sometimes it comes, of course, that next thing. 20 to 35. Okay? The next, the thing for that one, we call it one as your imbecile. Did you hear about the term imbecile? And again, the better way is that if we could go back a little bit, 50 to 70, you are a moron. That's the clinical term, okay? But right now, we don't use it even, of course, in the diagnostic statistical manual for mental disorders. But again, the term idiot, moron, imbecile, and moron are the clinical terms we use before it was so stricken out because they're so negative, implying negative things. That's why we call them profound, mild impairment, intellectual disability. Not again, that's an idiot. Okay, sometimes, you moron, and then sometimes, yeah, I know I'm a moron, but I'm better than you, idiot. Which is true. Intellectual capacity, this idiot is the lowest. Okay? So if somebody tells you, you're a moron, well, if I am that, I way much better than you because you're an idiot. So meaning to say a person has higher intellectual capacity than you. It may be funny, but that's the reality. Just imagine. Okay, so that's it. So the only thing we could do for them is that train, give them repetitive training in order for them to adhere with self-care. The goal will be the more profound is of course the intellectual disability of the child, the more that they need. Okay? So these are the people probably who are not learning or with severe intellectual disabilities. Okay? Another one that must cause genetic intellectual impairment, most common one, okay? The one with upward slanted eyes, protruding tongue, big tummy, and we're going to tell you, welcome to Walmart, okay? Something like that one, okay? That's why we're making them as readers. No pun intended for Down syndrome, okay? That's the most common one, of course, genetic anomaly that could cause, of course, intellectual impairment, okay? Depending, of course, on the intellectual impairment, then we could train them. That's why we have people, of course, from Walmart. If I saw them and passed by them, I always say hi. I want, of course, to treasure, of course, the way to become independent. Okay, they will say good morning. Oh, good morning. So they say, do you the dust kid? Okay, they were going to say that one, and they're going to grab it from them. Okay, thank you, man. Thank you. It's nice of you. So at this, they will smile. That's one way of giving them back, of course, to appreciate what they are doing. And you can even they have intellectual disabilities, and they have, of course, genetic intellectual impairment secondary to Down syndrome, but still they are functional. And again, the more functional these kids are in the segment of population, we are better. Because again, why? They could work, they could be independent. Okay? Chromosomal abnormality, increased incidence if you are getting pregnant above the age of 35. For those people, of course, who are 35 here and you are not yet pregnant for the first time, think twice. Okay? So that's why I'm advocating that one. But again, that's why the usual age, of course, is below 30, not below 15, because we don't want any pregnancy below that age bracket, because, of course, of the risk, of course, of, again, Down syndrome. But as we go along, If your first pregnancy is above 30, we call that one high-risk pregnancy. Because the risk, of course, for you developing, of course, a baby who has, of course, genetic abnormality is very high. Another one thing is that if you are having children already, children who are born above the age, of course, of 40 or 45, has the high chances of developing Down syndrome. Okay? So this is why, but again, increased incidence in children born to women older than 35 years of age. To be specific, for women whose first pregnancy is about 35. Okay? Women who are pregnant at the age of 35, if they have previous pregnancies already, it's fine. The risk is lesser. And again, the risk for that one is regardless of the age. If the woman is multiparous, meaning to say when we speak of multiparous, they are pregnant for more than 5 times. So when we speak of grand multipara, a woman will be, of course, having more than 5 pregnancies. Okay? So this is why I notice, of course, that when they are pregnant already for the 9th child, or 10th child, or 11th child, so most of it, these children, of course, ahead, of course, will be having, of course, having Down syndrome. Okay? What are the characteristics? The most common one is that if you are not pregnant, you're still young, but you are, because you don't want to get pregnant, okay? You are taking oral contraceptives, plus you are smoking, okay? Your increase of blood clot is very high. Another one, if you get pregnant with that combination, the reproducible posing, of course, to produce, of course, a Down syndrome child will be having a problem. Meaning to say that trisomy 21, there's another one, trisomy 18, but in trisomy 21, the 21 pair, supposed to be, will be only 2. In Down syndrome, they have 3 21st chromosomes. Okay, because of the 1 instead of 46, they have 47 total chromosomes. That's why they are abnormal. Okay? So typical, of course, is that we have flat nose, as you can see there, upward slanting eyes, usually just like a Mongol. Mongolia, of course, is not a country. We don't underestimate, of course, the Mongolians, of course, for their IQ or their mental retardation. The only thing is that they look like Chinese, which is upward slant. It is a country, of course, in Asia, okay, bordering, of course, Europe, and the people already have Mongolia. And the structure of the eyes is like that one, okay. But again, Mongolia in Mongolism, which we call this one, of course, as Down syndrome, has no relation. The only thing is because of the structure of the eyes. That's why babies or people, of course, who are born with Down syndrome are called Mongoloids. That's where the term is. Okay? But again, it's unfair, of course, for people in Mongolia, why they are being used. How about if it is, shall we say, Philippines, okay? They are Philippines, you have an abnormality, or they are Filipinos. So could you correlate, of course, Filipinos to a certain abnormality, just like Mongolism? So that's a bad thing, okay? But again, here's upward slanting eyes. Simian line. Commonly, of course, the baby, if you can open your arm, your palms, how many, of course, lines you see? What letter do you see? V? M. Oh, very good. Do you have M? It means millionaire. No, usually M or other, at least 2 to 3 folds. In simian line, they have 1 straight edge. Okay? The simian line, the crease in the palm is only 1 straight. Simian line, monkeys only have that. Only 1 straight line. That's why simian is the crease, of course, for the monkey. That's why we have the abnormal cross of the palm. Okay? The same is true in, of course, in the foot. So if you have simian line, the baby might be, of course, born. And again, when they are born, usually they might be big, of course, but they have hypotonic, meaning to say their arms are so flaccid. When they are born, of course, their muscular structures, their tone, the muscle is not so good. Yeah? So newborns also have short, stubby feet, wide, spaced big toe, transverse cross across the soles. Children with Down syndrome have varying degrees of intellectual impairment, but again, Down syndrome is the most common, of course, children, if they are born, that they have, of course, intellectual disability. So if there is a Down syndrome, if they are good in sports, they, of course, will be participating in Special Olympics. So that, or Special Olympics. Believe it or not, our American swimmer, of course, was in the special, the way he swim, oh gosh, he's almost, of course, an Olympian. Okay, and he has got Down syndrome. Okay? So amniocentesis and chorionic villus sampling, 2 things can be amniocentesis to check, of course, for chromosomal abnormality. Another one is chorionic villus sampling. Chorionic villus sampling, we check, of course, a sample in the chorion. Okay? In order to check and determine chromosomal disabilities prenatally. Diagnosed at birth through recognizable feature characteristics, the only to confirm will be, of course, your chromosomal studies to later confirm the diagnosis. Could we treat Down syndrome? There's no treatment. There's no cure. The only thing is that if we are just hoping that the intellectual impairment is not that severe. Okay? If there are some, of course, there are some. The only thing is that across all cultures, color, and creed, their facial features are the same. Okay? Upward slanted eyes. Okay? Sometimes another one is that low-set ears. The ears are small and below. Okay? That's one. Multi-system disorder, congenital, most common in children with Down syndrome is that they are born, of course, with cardiac defects. Meaning to say congenital heart defects is very common. Increasing incidence of leukemia for these children. That's why a lot of Down syndrome is having leukemia because their predisposition, of course, to develop this disease or cancer is very, very common. Thyroid disorders, because hypotonic abdominal muscles could be there present, of course, together as well. Yeah? Treatment, symptomatic, if they have congenital cardiac anomaly, surgery. Children may need assistance with feeding, chemotherapies for leukemia, because again, leukemia is very common among Down syndrome individuals. Antibiotics for infection, if they have surgery for cardiac anomalies or other disorders. Okay? Prevention of complications related to disorders, support to the family, and social and healthcare financial resources needed, of course. As a matter of fact, because of course of the degree of intellectual impairment or disability of the child, there are some group of people right now that, for example, if a couple is already towards elderly, so if they have, of course, a child who has a Down syndrome, and of course, child will say, an intellectual IQ, of course, of 50. Therefore, this child, of course, needs assistance always, and they need, of course, to be having, of course, a guardian. So we have an institution, the group of people, of course, they are forming this group, okay, the support groups, and legally they will be guarding, of course, for a child who has Down syndrome. In the event that the parents will die because of old age or whatsoever, this group or this group, of course, of people or group will be the one, of course, be standing for the guardian for the child, of course, with Down syndrome, wherever the child will be. Okay, because in the event, of course, that guardian decision maker, of course, for sure is very important towards the last end because they cannot decide for themselves. Okay, so another one, advocacy for this group of people is very, very common. Okay, special education, children need repetition to foster learning, decrease in relative IQ scores occurs with age, so as they age, okay, sometimes due to one. And abstract thinking required at a higher mental age. So abstract thinking requires at a higher mental age, therefore, sometimes their decision making might be, of course, questioned, so probably even counting, they have the more complex, of course, the discrepancy or incapacity, of course, in having numbers. Okay? Next one, Fragile X. What is Fragile X? Sex-linked abnormality of the X chromosomes, meaning to say, we speak of X-linked, sex-linked, meaning to say, women are the one that carry this. And again, Adam, or the male, will be the one to suffer it. Okay? Result in cognitive impairment, distinct physical features. Again, if you picture, of course, a child with Down syndrome, as you can see there, protruding tongue, upward slanted eyes, flat nose, small set ears. This one, Fragile X, if I see Fragile X, they have a very long face and very big ears. Two facial features of Fragile X individuals. Long, elongated face and big ears. And the bigger, and again, usually they have that one. And again, that's the feature. They might be, of course, big people. They have physically, they are big. The only thing for that one is that they have, of course, intellectual disabilities. Okay? Most commonly is that they might be physical, of course, they could work as laborers, but again, definitely further learning or upward learning, more complex learning will be, of course, incapable for them. Okay? So result in cognitive impairment, distinct physical features. Male children, large head and chin, long face. Large head and chin, long face, eyes, wide set. Meaning to say, it's wide set. Okay? Ears are large, open, protruding. So if you see, of course, children who have large ears in the elongated face, check. They might have, of course, Fragile X. Broad nose, meaning to say big nose. Big nose, broad nose. Unlike, of course, your children with Down syndrome, flat. Okay? High palate, meaning to say their palate. Okay? Big hands, meaning to say their hands are big. They're just like giants because they're tall. Okay? And large testicles. So they have great power. So the mantra, of course, of Project X people, because they have large testicles, is that they said, oh yeah, I don't have intellectual capacity much, just like you, but I have a large testicles. Okay? And you know, with large testicles, I have more power. And with power comes great responsibility. Okay? So that's the one thing, of course, for them. They have large testicles. That's a gift. Large ears, elongated face, large testicles. Characteristics of Fragile X. The only problem is that they might be gifted with physique that is big and strong, but their intellectual capacity is low. Okay? The rest one, the most common one that's being ridiculed, of course, of their looks, but at the same time, of course, is that another thing is that their intellectual capacity. They ended up, people, of course, will have this, it's very common among male children. Because why? This is X-linked. Therefore, commonly is that X-linked, the most commonly affected will be the male offsprings, or the boys, okay, or the males. And the woman, or the mother, will be the one carrying it, because they have an extra X, okay? So, possible speech delay, heart murmur, short attention span. The only genetic, okay, the only genetic disease that could be linked to attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, is Fragile X, okay? Although we know children who are born with fetal alcohol syndrome could be developing ADHD, but that is acquired in the mother's exposure to alcohol. But this one is X-linked, meaning to say genetic. That's the only genetic, of course, link to a disease called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So if the child, of course, has Fragile X, there might likelihood, of course, develop, of course, of your hyperactivity disorders. Sometimes some people exhibit autistic type behaviors. What are autistic type behaviors? We'll discuss. But autism, temper tantrums will be because, of course, of their intellectual capacity. So again, just the same true, of course, with your genetic anomalies or genetic defects. Diagnoses are always done with chromosomal studies to check if indeed, of course, we have problems with the genes. Okay? Treatment asymptomatic. Do we have cure? This no cure. But we have to educate them. Now, okay, that's the Fragile X. So again, later on, there are some things, of course, that you can go deeper for the one. If you can go online, you can see, of course, the pictures, images, of course, of Fragile X syndrome that are very, of course, elongated face. Acquired intellectual impairment. These are, of course, the ones that have been acquired. Okay, meaning to say we speak of acquired, they are not indigenetic, but they are acquired. So most common will be fetal exposure to infection, drugs, and chemicals. So first one, maternal factors, maternal factors, maternal factors. Because why? Once the woman is exposed to toxoplasmosis, rubella, what else? Chickenpox. What is chickenpox? Varicella. Isn't that? So that's one thing. Then they will be exposed, of course, to heterogenetic diseases that could affect, of course, the babies that will eventually have intellectual impairment. Okay? Drugs. What kind of drugs? A lot. One of them is crack. And not only crack, it could be other forms of drugs. It could be abuse, of course, of your narcotics. Okay? Especially the worst is that a drug user or a narcotic user who is a nurse. Nurses are the number one people, of course, who are exposed to narcosis, or we call it the narcotic overuse or narcotic addiction, because we have access, okay, to those medication. Okay? So chemicals, so whatever chemicals will be, it might be asbestos, it might be, of course, things, of course, in the environment, of course, of the woman. It might be even pollution of Chicago. Okay? Maternal malnutrition, the diet, the nutrition of the mother, it plays an important role. Because why? If the baby is not receiving enough nutrition, or the baby, of course, is not receiving enough oxygen, the development of the child will be hampered. It might affect the brain, but will eventually, of course, bear to the child, of course, to have intellectual disabilities. Okay? So, most common are those babies who are preterm babies. Preterm babies, who are those preterm babies? How do you define premature babies? Huh?
Babies that are born below 7 months. 6 months?
6 months, 7 months.
Low birth weight.
Huh?
Low birth weight also.
That's commonly, of course, common with low birth weight infants, okay? Okay, so 7 months, 7 times 35 weeks will be still premature. So any babies who are born below 37 weeks, to be specific, and we're going to talk about that one. 37 weeks is how many months? 35 is 7. So 7.5 months. Okay? Because again, 37 is almost closer, of course, to normal.
So usually, of course, as early as, of course, this one. So again, or shall we say technically, of course, 37 months and below. So we're going to talk as we go along with that one. Okay, these are preterm babies. Okay, the more preterm the baby, the lesser the chance, of course, of the baby to survive. But we're going to talk about as we go along for that one. Babies who are also born, of course, with small for gestational age. Small for gestational age babies are low. We call it as your low birth weight infants. Okay, or meaning to say they're so small for their gestational age. Okay. Second one is your developmental disabilities. So first one, we have intellectual disabilities, the capacity of the child to learn. These are the developmental learning disabilities. So meaning to say, of course, is that developmental disabilities, group chronic impairments. It could be physical, cognitive, psychological, sensory, speech, mental retardation, or we call it one as your, under the umbrella, of course, of this one, we have, of course, your intellectual disability, most common. Okay? That's why, as you can see, mental retardation is being struck out. We use the term intellectual disabilities. Okay? To use euphemism, of course, for the mentally retarded. Because mentally retarded, meaning to say, are you retarded? Okay. He's not a retarded, he's a moron. Okay. Thank you. At least I'm better than you, idiot. Okay. So bad. Others, of course, are together with the cerebral palsy. People with cerebral palsy or children with cerebral palsy are those, of course, has problems with coordination and muscle control. We're going to talk about that one. Hearing loss, visual impairment. So people, of course, who are blind are having developmental disabilities. Okay? So we consider them. Therefore, they have to be given, of course, a way to access information, even education they will be given. And with us, of course, even if they are blind, there they have still can function as normal individuals in the society. Some people, of course, have DDs, mild DDs, or developmental disabilities. So some of them are speech and language disorders. They cannot, of course, speak fluently. If they speak, of course, there are some problems together with the speech. Some learning disabilities, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD is a form of developmental disabilities. Okay? Because why? These children with the ADHD will going to realize is that this commonly is very hard, of course, to educate because, of course, of their hyperactivity plus, of course, attention deficit. Okay? So learning disabilities disorder in one or more processes involved in understanding using language. It could be memory, attention span, sequence of information, especially sequence of information. I have, of course, a student who has, of course, DDs before in nursing. Okay? When he is taking an exam, he has always trouble, especially if it is, of course, midterm and finals. You know why? When he hit the number 60, of course, when he's taking exam, the numbers, the questions in the numbers are already scrambling. Okay? Because he has, of course, what we call as your problems, of course, with perception, of course. Okay? And more, of course, of dyslexia. Okay? Violent dyslexia. But you know what? He tried, of course, to win off, of course, his difficulty. And he's the first one of his group to take the NCLEX and pass it right away. Okay? So that's the thing. After school performance, all aspects of life affects, of course, school performance of all aspects of life. Okay? In this condition. So learning disability. First one, specific learning disabilities, we call this SLD. This is the one, of course, that's being screened when the child is entering kindergarten. Okay, if the child has this difficulty. Children of normal intellectual function can also have SLDs, meaning to say they have, of course, specific learning deficits, but again, their IQ level is high. The only thing for that one is that they have problems, of course, in the other forms of learning difficulties. Somebody who doesn't know numbers is not necessarily, of course, has, of course, a poor or below normal learning, of course. But again, they might have, of course, difficulty in that specific numbers because their perception of numbers is different. But give them another forms of reasoning, they will then excel and they have normal IQ. Okay? Evidence by difficulty in speaking, writing, listening, talking, spelling, or calculating. Okay? So again, anybody who didn't know how to compute, of course, those numbers there, you might have, of course, problems with SLD, or you have SLD. And again, if you have SLD, it doesn't mean that your intellectual capacity is low. Only problem is that you have limitation on that specific aspect. Okay? Dyslexia, difficulty in reading, spelling, writing words, reverses letters, or numbers. This one. I have one student who is now an LPN, and he's already going to his, of course, RN. He's a male one, and he has dyslexia. He has, have difficulty. It will to him, but again, he struggled, of course, to these reverse numbers and letters. Okay? But eventually, he made it through me, and he made it through NCLEX on the first attempt. Okay? And married. And he will be marrying the valedictorian of the next class. Okay. Children with SLD often has low self-esteem. Okay? Because, of course, of the fact that they think, of course, especially those people that has lisping or mispronunciation. Usually, of course, this might be, of course, as SLDs, or some of these children, of course, has problems with math. Okay? So teaching consideration is very important. They need, of course, to be reinforced in order for them to learn better. Okay? So a child who does not appear to follow direction can cause frustration. That's why the biggest thing is that we have to train them. If we are training them, always remember, repetitive, if they have limitations in learning. Okay? The child may continue to play IV pumps or other equipment after repeated requests. Sometimes you ask nurse, what is happening to this child? He never listens. So because of the fact, of course, that the child might have, of course, developmental disability. Such behavior may negate a behavioral problem or learning disorder. In either case, patient accessibility is very important, and we have to reinforce, again, highlight positive reinforcement. What do you know about positive reinforcement? Because, of course, I believe sister taught you, of course, about mental health. What is positive reinforcement?
When you get a reward for doing
right.
How?
They reward the person over and over if they're completing the same task over and over.
Like, for example, a patient, of course, who is major depression, okay? How do you do positive reinforcement to the patient?
With what?
How do you implement positive reinforcement to a patient who has clinical depression or major depression? Did you talk about major depression in mental health? Did you remember it?
When they talk about the future, what they're planning to do in the future, instead of maybe thinking about killing themselves.
Their killing would be another concept, of course, but again, the suicide precaution, this could be, but again, how do you do? The thing is that what's the major problem in depression?
The suicide.
Not only that one, there's a complication, of course, of major depression, but what's the core problem in the individual with depression?
Hearing voices.
That's hallucination, you see? And this part might be, of course, major depression, but it's not the root, of course, of the problem. My question will be, what is the major problem in a patient with depression? Do you know?
Emotional.
I know it's an illness. It's a mental illness, which could manifest physically even. What's the major concept, of course, when you're talking? What's that?
Low self-esteem.
Very good. That's the bottom line, of course, of depression. Always remember.
What is it?
The patient has very low self-esteem. That's the bottom line for it. Okay? From that point, of course, that patient, of course, is having, of course, very low self-esteem. Your way, of course, of reaching out to this patient, of course, will be to enhance the positive self-esteem. Therefore, we use positive reinforcement in order, of course, to maintain positive behaviors. For example, simple thing is that. Example, first one is that, if Miss Jones, shall we say, of course, has depression. By the mere fact, of course, shall we say, when I come there, of course, to work Miss Jones, I'm going to say, of course, good morning, Miss Jones. By the mere fact that I said good morning to Miss Jones, I recognize Miss Jones that she exists. Simple as that. I'm giving positive reinforcement because I recognize the patient. One more thing next step. Oh, Miss Jones, you look good. Not only that one. Not only you look good because you look good is so subjective. How about we're going to focus, of course, on the positive, significant behavior. I noticed, Miss Jones, that you combed your hair today. How about that? That's reinforcement. Okay? So those are the techniques, of course, we use, and of course, in mental health, there are some specific things. Again, we can do good and bad. But usually, of course, we try to focus more on the specific behavior that we try to reinforce for the patient to keep it from going. Okay? And then later on, we're going to talk about, of course, your suicide as a part, of course, of major depression. But again, I want, of course, just to touch, of course, positive reinforcement. It only shows to me that you have the concept of what is positive reinforcement. How about negative reinforcement? Do we use it clinically? How do you understand negative reinforcement?
Sometimes you use negative reinforcements to challenge the person.
How? Give me a specific one.
Like you are moron. Seriously.
Is that the concept? It's bullying. It's degrading the person as a person. It's not negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement, of course, could end of course on one thing. If there is a reward giving, negative reinforcement is punishing.
Or lying, like telling them you're going to give it.
No, lying is different. Okay, lying, of course, will be different. Of course, it will be different. It's not negative reinforcement. Meaning to say, think about this one. The person has a negative behavior, and you don't want him to do this negative behavior. Okay, Another example, like for example, commonly of course is that, what if of course I'm going to do this negative behavior? So sometimes, the most common things that we're doing clinically of course in mental health is that we disregard the negative behaviors. We ignore the negative behavior. But there are some things, of course, if we are utilizing negative reinforcement, the negative behavior, we punish them. So meaning to say, of course, if they do this negative behavior, we will punish them. Okay? That's my question is that, are we doing it clinically? And I want a specific example.
Well, in the nursing homes, like...
Are you working at SMI? We call it SMI is your... What is SMI? Serious Mental Illness Facility. Okay?
Well, that's like, you know, if they did something really bad, like hit someone else, and then you're gonna...
You hit them too?
No, like I'm saying, you're gonna now put a...
Restraint?
Yes. Yeah,
No, you can't do
Behavioral.
You lack that sometimes.
No, that's what I'm saying is the negative reinforcement, you punishing them.
No. Restraint is being used only. Okay? It's not a form of punishment. It is to prevent injury to the client and to other people. That's the purpose of restraint.
No, I know. What I was saying was...
But we don't restrain people, of course, because you're doing bad stuff. That's not negative.
No, I know, but that could be a force of negative.
No. It's not. It's restraint. It should never be construed as a form of negative reinforcement. I'm just challenging, of course, you to think, of course, otherwise. The most common, do we use, like question, do we use, of course, but the most common one that we do in children will be passive reinforcement, that's it. Okay, but question will be, how about negative reinforcement? Do we punish, of course, people clinically, meaning to say, do we use that one as an intervention?
No.
Of course, clinically, of course, in the field of medicine or in nursing. The answer will be yes. How? Okay,
Drugs.
example for this one.
Drugs.
What kind of drugs? Example. Charlie,
I
what
was
is
going
that?
to say letting them vent it out, like...
It's that. We call it one emotional catharsis, offering yourself, of course, to be as a tool for them to express. That's another therapeutic communication, encouraging expression of feelings. Yeah.
I forgot the name. Laura said.
Encourage, because why? Allow them to vent their feelings, allow them to encourage expression of feelings, because that's very healthy for them. When they express themselves clinically, in the behaviorally, it means, of course, that they feel better. And the only thing for that one, they were able to open up themselves to you. The first rule in mental health, if the patient, of course, has mental disorder, your first goal will be to establish trust. Rapport, trust will be essential for you, of course, to use yourself therapeutically to this client. Another thing is that your first goal is that once you establish trust will be to make sure in the face of the patient for them to accept the reality that they have mental illness. Because if they're denying the fact that they have mental illness, you cannot reach out, okay, and help them. That's why giving them to express themselves will be an important tool for them to accept the reality that they have something wrong with them and they are willing, of course, to get some help. Okay, example, that's the sort, but again, in a negative reinforcement environment, we use that one in alcoholism. In alcoholism, especially Alcoholics Anonymous, people, of course, will be admitting, of course, that they are, okay? So sometimes, we are giving them, sometimes if they accept for it one and they sign consent, that we will be giving them drugs, okay? This common drug, the name, of course, of this drug is used, technically, it's what they call as your disulfiram. Disulfiram, or known as also your anti-abuse or anti-abuse. The patient who is alcoholic, who is being rehabilitated for alcoholism, take this medication. What does this medication do? They have to refrain from alcohol by the event that they take alcohol even from a mouthwash. Okay? The symptom of severe alcoholism, severe, of course, nausea and vomiting, severe problem headache will be manifested for them. We call it one negative reinforcement. Giving the medication, but they consented for that one, that in the event that we're going to take alcohol, if they will not be, of course, abstinent, of course, for this alcohol, they will be suffering a severe symptom. That's the only clinical thing, of course, that we use for negative reinforcement in alcoholism management. We call it one as your disulfiram or anti-abuse. Besides that, we don't use any form, of course, of negative reinforcement, only in your alcoholism. Okay? But in society, of course, we do have to put them in prison or death row if they did something wrong, isn't it? Okay. That's negative reinforcement. Okay. 608. So the next topic that we'll discuss will be ADHD. So we have what else? This is ADHD. Another thing will be autism. What else? ADHD, autism. These are the diseases. And then we'll talk about Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. What else?
Schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia.
Huh? Schizophrenia later on, it's just similar because it's mental health later on. But again, the big time is that ADHD. What else? Tourette's. Tourette's is a funny thing. Tourette's. And another one, of course.
Muscular dystrophy.
Huh?
Muscular
Yeah,
dystrophy.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And what else?
Plumbism.
Another one is plumbism will be passing by just simple. The another thing is that your cerebral palsy. It's a big time. Okay, you can go on your break as much as possible. If you could come back right away so that we can finish early. Okay, so as much as possible, we have of course a lot of time to discuss all these things. Okay, any questions so far? No questions? The same thing. Either you could get everything or nothing at all. Okay, pick one. Oh, before you go, so I would like, of course, to honor because somebody, of course, debated with me on my way home last Monday because of the reasoning one thing, especially appendicitis, okay? Her reasoning to me, of course, is that, Mr. Lear, do you mean, of course, that when they have, of course, appendicitis, we're not giving them antibiotics? If we get an IV antibiotics, is that, of course, a big no for a patient who has appendicitis? I know, of course, that again, antibiotics could be IV antibiotics usually, of course, is the first choice if the patient, of course, has ruptured appendicitis. Is that correct? Okay, and your book says so. But again, does it prevent, of course, the doctors to give antibiotics IV for a patient with appendicitis? Very good reasoning. And as a matter of fact, the most common form, if indeed, of course, we give antibiotic, will be PO. But does it prevent that? Does giving IV antibiotic make it wrong as a choice for there, besides, of course, the symptoms? The answer is no. IV antibiotic could be an option, although the most recommended option, of course, in appendicitis will be appendectomy. Because of that reason, I want everybody to reason out with me during the discussion, of course, of the exam, because I could credit another point for you. Remember, if you don't reason out with me, remember, I'm listening. I always do, okay? So usually, of course, because of that one, I'm going to give you another extra point. So you got +4 for that. Okay? Just like that, of course, to be in the spot signal. And keep doing that one. Challenge yourself, reason out with me, I'm listening.
Hello. Hello?
Yeah. This, of course, will be affected. This way was that their muscles, of course, are stiff. So again, we speak of spastic cerebral palsy. One word, of course, to describe them. They are stiff. Clear. Meaning to say they don't have movement. If you move them, they are so stiff because it's very hard to move them because it's like they are contracted. Okay? Because of course their muscles are so stiff. That's spastic cerebral palsy, which most commonly does come out around, according to how many percent? Almost close to 80%, isn't it? 80% of children with CP or cerebral palsy are having spastic form. Second one. The sensory disabilities, hearing will be common about spastic palsy. The second one is your dyskinetic attetoid. Okay? These are the people, of course, who are having those movements, breathing movements. Just like that one, or infinity movement, of course, that you can see. Okay? Usually, movements, twisting, grimacing, sharp jerking, just like, of course, in your Tourette's, but this one is all constant. Okay? In Tourette's, it just goes on the time. You're normally, you're going to face it one. In your dyskinetic, it's always constant. It might be just like that one because they have cerebral palsy. Okay? So disappear when sleep, just like your Tourette's. When they're relaxed and they're asleep, you don't have these tics. But here also, in dyskinetic, they don't have that one because they have tremors, they have difficulty walking. These are the common people, of course, who have cerebral palsy that you see, of course, that are wheelchair bound and usually, of course, staring at there with movements. Okay? These are what they call as your dyskinetic or attetoid. Okay? So the third one is your ataxic. Ataxia is a word, of course, that impair coordination. Difficulty controlling hands and arms. That's the third form is that they sometimes stay there. They might be movement, but again, when you allow them to move, these are the people that, okay, tell them, of course, to grab something. They cannot grab, of course, the thing that they are doing because they cannot coordinate their movement. Therefore, this one is that uncoordinated. These are the form, of course, ataxic individuals are that uncoordinated hand and arms movement. Okay? You allow them, okay, clap your hands. They might be doing that one because they cannot coordinate, of course, their movement. Okay? That's what we call ataxic. And the fourth one would be your mixed cerebral palsy. So just combine, of course, all those. The main problems for this one is that the child grows older, is that difficulty in sucking, feeding, tremors, hands to separate infant diaper. So again, when you put the child, of course, lying, why is that it's very hard to split the legs of the child, of course, into put, of course, diapers? There's another early manifestation. But again, the most common is that when you lift the child, crisscrossing, of course, of the legs, scissor-like gait is very, very common evident. In fact, crossed legs will lift them from behind rather than pulling them up. It will be flexible, so normal behavior. Hearing and visual screening will be very important in cerebral palsy children, especially, of course, spastic type. Usually, of course, blindness and your deafness or hearing loss is very, very common. Especially the most common one would be if they have the most common form of CP, which is your spastic type. Spastic, stiff muscles. The next one will be dyskinetic or attitoid movements. Okay, tremors. That's one thing, of course, that's like having tremors. And again, when we speak, of course, about ataxic, they cannot coordinate movements. Okay? Clap your hands. Just like that one. If you want, of course, to see, there are some children downstairs. When you pass by, you come early. We have a lot, of course, of CP individuals there. No cure. Only prevent brain damage to the child. That's the only way you could do it. Okay? So what we do is that improve child's function, foster the capacity of the child to function. So that's why we have braces, splits, walkers, may aid in ambulation if the child could walk. Okay? So that's one thing. Adaptive devices, hearing aid, especially of course if they have hearing difficulty, vision or vision enhanced equipment, as braces, walkers help mobility. So muscle relaxant can reduce tremors, especially of course if they are of course dyskinetic type. Spasticity, education, clients and family, emotional support. Again, could it be treated? It could be they could adapt with the limitation of the movement, but they cannot be cured with it. There's no cure for cerebral palsy because why? The damage in the brain is permanent. Okay? Next.
What if the child is lucky enough to have a intact intellect and as
well, that's what. That's what called cerebral palsy too. If you have the intact intellect.
Yeah, what's the chances of the child keeping that intellect as he grows older?
It doesn't deteriorate.
Doesn't, okay.
Intellectual capacity of a child, of course, with CP does not deteriorate. And again, the motor deficit or the coordination doesn't progress, meaning to say it doesn't worsen over time. It's stuck there at that level. That is why our trick for cerebral palsy patients is that we try to help them to move around, to have an effective movement. Just like walkers, wheelchair might be, they cannot, of course, maintain their legs. They could be, of course, having, of course, a little bit of training on the remote control, of course, or the electron-operated wheelchairs. That's a very common thing for them, and that to walk. Just like somebody, of course, who is, of course, the most advanced, of course, mind in physics. Although he doesn't have any CP, he has ALS or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and his name is Hawking, Stephen Hawking. Okay, but he doesn't have CP. He has progressive one, and he has ALS, or known as your rapid deterioration of the brain, known as your Lou Gehrig syndrome. Lou Gehrig is one, of course, a baseball player who has been first diagnosed, of course, with the ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And his is progressive. You see, of course, Hawking, he cannot speak anymore. He cannot speak anymore, of course, if you have watched, of course, the theory of, what's that one? The theory of better life. There's a movie, of course, for him. But again, Stephen Hawking, of course, right now, is almost, it cannot talk. He's guided, of course, even his speech, of course, is affected already. So again, the only thing is that the advanced, of course, program that is attached, of course, to his cheek that could produce, of course, speech. But in CP, it doesn't progress. Meaning to say, if the child has this movement, the only thing, of course, or the holding or cannot walk at that specific, as they grow old, that's the limitation. It does not worsen. That's the best way, of course, to expressing it. Because it is not progressive. Therefore, there's the possibility, of course, that their brain might deteriorate. Although I am not saying, of course, when they grow older, they won't get dementia. They might, but that's a different story. But if their brain function diminishes because, of course, of cerebral palsy, the answer is no. That is why these are people, of course, if they have intellectually gifted, they remain. These are, of course, the people that even they have CP, cerebral palsy, they, of course, survive and thrive, of course, in the academic world. Okay? Even they have limitations in movement. That's the only thing, of course, that is very good about them. Yeah? So again, as you can see, of course, the adaptation of course of autism is way harder than CP. CP is only physical limitation. It doesn't progress. It doesn't worsen over time. Okay? The one that worsens over time, we call it one, the term will be progressive, will be of course your Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. Okay? In Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, common degenerative. This is degenerative because it is degenerative. From one point of limitation, it worsens over time until such time that the child will die. Okay? So X-linked, meaning to say, the women, of course, are the one carrying it, and women suffers it. Okay? This is, of course, our contribution to society, to human race. Suffer, of course, the X-linked genetic disorders. It affects boys because, of course, of the fact that it is X-linked. So that progressive atrophy of symmetrical groups of muscle. These are the symmetrical groups of muscle. Progressive, meaning to say, it's continuously impairing. Skeletal muscles. Therefore, all the skeletal muscles will be affected. The biggest muscle that will be affected first will be the muscles of the legs. Okay? Lack of protein known as your dystrophin. Okay? Lack of dystrophin, of course, is the one, of course, is common one, of course, that again, when the child grows older, especially when the child is, of course, 3 years old, for sure, but before the child could reach 10 or before the child graduates from elementary, going middle school, the child is already wheelchair bound. Okay? So gradual loss of strength, increasing muscle deformity. So that's some good things. Again, so as the child, of course, is that 3 years old, you can see the child falls. The good thing about this one is that you can see that the child walks, jumps, and after that once that you notice at 3 years old, the child begins, of course, to be clumsy, having accidents of falling around. And as you go along sometimes, the child cannot get himself by using, of course, the legs. So one way, of course, to compensate it is to use the goer sign. The goer sign is very typical of Duchenne's. Okay? Here, the child is pushing himself. If they are sitting, of course, on the floor, he will be pushing himself, using, of course, the upper limbs to push him out, of course, to standing position. That's what of course, the compensate, of course, using the upper arm, because the most one is that it ascends. It starts, of course, from the legs, of the leg muscles. Unusual gait, sometimes they tiptoe because, of course, of their loose of muscle tone. Sometimes the most that, if you are talking about dystrophy or atrophy, meaning to say you are losing muscle mass, isn't it? In reality, is that the most common question is that why is that the legs, of course, of children with Duchenne muscular dystrophy doesn't small? Usually, of course, if it is atrophy, it's supposed to be the muscle shrinks, isn't it? But in this form of muscular dystrophy, their muscle doesn't shrink. Okay? Even it's not used because of the fact, of course, that they might look like have muscles, but their muscles are replaced, of course, with fatty tissues. That's why there's no muscular function anymore, of course, of the legs as the child progresses. So deterioration of respiratory, because again, why? Even it attacks primary muscles, the worst thing that it will not ascend in effect will be your diaphragm. What is diaphragm? That is your primary respiratory muscle, or that's your primary breathing muscle. If diaphragm is paralyzed, just like this one, or not paralyzed, but again weakens, because of course of Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, the child can never breathe effectively, cannot cough effectively, and commonly, of course, children with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy doesn't die with that thing, but usually with respiratory complications. That is why, and the next thing, of course, that will kill the child is again, pneumonia. Okay? So the most common death of children with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, of course, is respiratory complications, which is very common, is pneumonia. Okay? Respiratory failure, or the child cannot breathe anymore. So presence of symptoms, EMG, so elevated, of course, your aspartate amine transfer, or ALT, mute, no cure. So again, if the child has Duchenne's, sad to say it will going to progress until such time can no longer walk, can no longer feed, can no longer eat because of course of muscle impairment, until such time that the child can no longer swallow and the child can never breathe because of course of the involvement of the last and very important, of course, muscles, the diaphragm, which is responsible, of course, for your breathing. Okay? Genetic counseling. So if you are a woman who is carrying, of course, this trait, don't wish to have a son, is again your option will be open. So do you think you want, of course, to have children? Was possible, of course, of developing Duchenne's muscular dystrophy? Or you want to adopt? So again, genetic counselor will be important thing, of course, to open your options. Because again, if your options will be, of course, clear, of course, that you have high genetic predisposition of these children, and you have an identified gene that will be producing Duchenne's muscular dystrophy boys or males to produce, then watch out, of course, for that one. Okay? Other options, of course, of having children will be, of course, presented to you. Sensory ones, just like, of course, visual impairment. So if the child, of course, is blind, so we could still train it how to read using Braille. Right now we have, of course, voice enhanced, of course, utilization, of course, of the computer system. So again, these children, of course, has limitation for 1 or 2 senses, but they can still have, not necessarily having, of course, intellectual disability. Okay? 7:39. So I have how many minutes? Before 8. Okay, I still have enough. Okay, so sensory impairment. So again, how do we train the child? The most common if the child is blind will be, how do we teach them? With the improvement, of course, of the software, of course, for blinds, of course, in the computer system, they could use, of course, the audio once. We use audio tapes, CD on tapes, book on tapes, or book. We don't use, of course, CD on book on tapes anymore because that's obsolete. We have CD on tapes, okay? Or we probably downstreaming, or probably, of course, podcasting. As we have, of course, now, of course, in the new generation, okay? Or if they want to learn, of course, from books, we use them to teach them the most common one, Braille system. Okay, as you can see, if we have blind individuals, of course, when you go to the elevator, what are those, that thing there that says this first floor, okay? Those are, of course, for those who are, now, we don't call them blind. Although the term legally blind would be, of course, the thing, of course, that we're using, but again, we call them visually impaired, okay? Because visual impairment ranging, of course, from incapacity to see, of course, limited sight, to, of course, person who has totally, of course, no sight. Okay? So vision, of course, visual impairment will be, of course, limitation. Or some people, of course, could be corrected through glasses. Some children, of course, cannot. That's like, of course, your retinal fibroplasia. What is secondary, of course, to the damage, of course, of the retina of the child. Secondary, of course, for oxygen. High oxygen therapy for premature infants is very, very common. Among them, of course, will be cataract optic nerve dystrophy, or probably retinitis pigmentosa. Could we treat retinitis pigmentosa? No, it is also progressive. It will be post-blindness to the child. Okay? Audio tapes, Braille's reading could be available for children who are. Magazines comes also in form in large print, especially for those visually limited individuals. Encourage non-sighted individuals to participate in activities. Just imagine if you are blind, you can still music or guided skiing. That's why sometimes I find is that, how about, of course, if you put them some GPS? Like, for example, if we have a white cane that's being used, of course, why not attach, of course, an electronic device that is GPS, micro GPS, meaning to say it can read your position, 1 meter diameter. Okay, so we have, okay, turn in 4 steps, turn to the left. Okay, so the blind person, we're gonna do that one. Okay, watch out. On your right, there's a mud hole. Okay, so 2 steps on the left. Okay. Move forward, okay, or probably you missed your exit. We're routing. The blind person will be, of course, standing there. Okay, move forward in 4 steps. Turn to the right. So something like that, isn't it? But I mean, I'm thinking in the future, it must be funny concept, but why not? For those people who are using white canes, only blind person can use a white cane, no other else. Although one thing, of course, for these blind persons would be the use, of course, of your guide dogs. We train dogs, of course, and we pair them. And we're going to look for that one, but these are children, so they're not using that one thing. So if they go into adults, guide dogs is one. Another one, of course, will be, of course, their white canes. Only blind person could use white canes. Okay? Even hotels that does not allow pets, allow guide dogs. Because the guide dogs, of course, is part of the function of a blind person. Okay? And person who is using white cane, which is only visually impaired, they have always the right of way. If they cross a line, even if it is green, you give them way, you have to stop. Okay? Because they have always right of way, that's by law. In terms, of course, in order, of course, to encourage them, of course, to move around. Because just imagine, they could do guided skiing, okay? So guided skiing, so probably, of course, there will be, of course, something to guide them. Okay? They could do that one, or swimming, probably. Okay? Or probably you're swimming towards Pacific Ocean. You're out there. And in less than, in about 10 flaps of your legs, turn to the right, or swing to the right, so probably like that one, okay? I mean, just make it funny, but in the future, you know. Okay? We don't know advanced technology right now.
You can be a finder.
Huh?
Maybe you can do it.
Can do what?
This technology.
My skills is already focused on teaching, so what do you want me to do?
Both.
Just pick one and master one. Okay? You cannot master A lot of you cannot master. You cannot serve a lot of masters. Only one. And this is mine. Okay. Okay. Hearing impairment. So hearing impairment. We're going to advance it later on. People, of course, with rubella syndrome, toxoplasmosis. Okay. Or children, of course, with what is that again? What are the people, of course, where the children, of course, are prone, of course, to hearing difficulty? How about children with spastic, of course, CP? Are they prone, of course, to hearing impairment? How about children, of course, with toxoplasmosis, with chickenpox exposure? Could be prone, of course, to this one, hearing impairment? Yes, they could. There are two forms of hearing impairment. One is conductive hearing loss. The other one is sensory neural hearing loss. The one that's conductive could be corrected, of course, by hearing aids. That's why we could use, of course, CMV. CMV is a form, of course, of your herpes virus. Rubella or syphilis are the possible, of course, causes, of course, infectious teratogens to the mother. Okay? Avoiding social interaction, playing alone. So sometimes, person who is hearing impaired, the good thing about right now is that when the child is born, we have already hearing screening. Okay? So when the child is born, we know already if the child is deaf or not. But one of the manifestations, because in the older days, is that a child who is not producing any sound at the age, of course, of 10 to 12 months is usually, of course, deaf. Because again, why? We only produce language if we hear it. So if you don't hear anything, we don't produce language. Okay? Okay, displaying poor social skills, communication and safety issues, of course, for the families. Hearing aid. Another one is speech impairment, diffuse fluency. Okay, you are lisping or whatsoever. Okay, so usually interrupting the normal flow of speech. So whatever, of course, rehabilitation will be. That's why as speech impaired individuals, this is normal, provided there should be no problems if the child is reaching 7 to 8 years old. That is why when our child is entering first grade, usually the child, for every school we have your SLP, speech language pathologist, or in our nursing home, speech therapist. Okay? They will be, of course, screening children who might have problems with speech, so that interventions could be implemented as early as 7 to 8 years old. Because why? A child might have problems with his fluency. If the child is only 6 years old or 5 years old, no problem with that one. Because again, mastery, of course, of pronunciation of speech will be acquired by the child when the child is around 7 to 8 years of age. Okay? So that's one thing. Common cause of speech disorder children, hearing disorders, because if they don't hear it, they cannot speak it. Childhood depression. What are the things, of course, in childhood depression? Okay? Young children often have difficulty expressing themselves. Depression can go unnoticed. You might, of course, especially in adolescence, you don't know why it's not only the hormones of this child, but you go, if you see, of course, that it's already usually childhood depression. This is the most common one that has been neglected by parents, or the parent was not able to capture. And it results, of course, to one grave result, or unintervened childhood depression could lead into, of course, your full-blown suicide. Okay? So isolation, sadness, withdrawal from friends and family, fatigue, decrease in activity level, decrease in appetite. That's why in child, of course, if they are identified, of course, with depression, change in grades or the grades declines, sleep patterns, they cannot sleep during the night, are just simple manifestation that the child might have having depression. Okay? So monitoring this behavior and again seeking, of course, of intervention is very, very important. Whether it is medication or it may be, of course, psychotherapy for this child. Okay? One important thing for this one is that, is it correct for anybody who is, of course, who has been diagnosed with depression, whether it's an adult or child, is it okay, of course, if the child, of course, is having depression, okay? Is it okay to ask the child, are you planning to kill yourself? Shall we say anybody who is having depression or identified or diagnosed with having depression, even the patient, of course, is not talking about you, is having suicide, is it therapeutic to ask the patient who is diagnosed with depression with this question, are you planning to kill yourself?
Yeah.
Even if they're not talking about suicide.
Yeah.
Okay? So are you sure? Even if they are thinking, but as long as they have depression, then we can ask them, of course, are you trying to kill yourself? Are you planning to kill yourself? Or do you have thoughts of killing yourself?
Yes.
The answer will be regardless of as long as the child, of course, is depressed, because the most common complication of depression will be suicide. And suicide okay, should be prevented. That's why, as a law, as an intervention, of course, for us, clinically in psychiatric nursing, will be if the patient, of course, has clinical depression or major depression, we ask, of course, if they have what we call is that suicidal ideation. Do you think of killing yourself? Okay, suicidal plan. How do you want to kill yourself? And the worst thing is that, when do you plan? But when is the most common example? Is that the most common? We could answer it when it will be the most memorable event, of course, in their lives. Okay, birthdays, anniversaries, birthdays, those are the most common dates, of course, that the depressed individual is planning to kill himself. Bottom line for depression will be low self-esteem. So because of that one, we have to increase their self-esteem. Okay? American people, the number one, of course, mental disorder is depression. That is why we are munching, we are eating, we are consuming a lot of antidepressants. Ranging, of course, from, what is your antidepressant? Oh, I'm taking Zoloft. How about you? I am having Paxil. So how about you? I am having, of course, whatever, of course, antidepressants. So then, Luvox, Paxil, Zoloft, what else? Paroxetine is Paxil. Sertraline, Zoloft, okay? So these are the medications that's commonly, of course, munching because, of course, of depression. Our lifestyle, of course, in the U.S., of course, is very close to depression. And we, Americans, especially those people who are born here, are very high risk for depression. Okay?
Keep all the sharks away.
Huh?
Keep all the sharks and...
That is, of course, already if you're implementing suicide precaution. Okay? For a child. This is your responsibility. Okay. As we go along, we're going to talk about automatic. Difficult because if the physician rule out organic cause. What's that? Is it hormone imbalance? Is it, of course, problems with stress? Or it is problems, of course, with the thyroid? So all these things is very hard to diagnose because it will be, especially adolescents, it's very hard, of course, to what to blame for this behavior, of course, of the child. It might be organic. When we speak of organic, there is a physical cause, of course, on this behavior. But again, bottom line, if it's clinical depression, low self-esteem is the major cause of it. Okay? Depression can also occur in children with chronic illness disability. The most common one is that children with DM, diabetes mellitus. It's very common. You have to watch, of course, for a child with diagnosed with type 1 DM. They will be, of course, suffering, of course, or probably going through, of course, a child with depression. Okay? First step is identifying symptoms. Investigate thoroughly, prevent further complication. And the most common complication of suicide, of depression is suicide. That's why psychotherapy and counseling are necessary. Serious cases may require hospitalization if the child indeed, of course, has a threat. Family counseling, of course, would be helpful. Okay? Now, so depression is serious, of course, in children. We know that. And again, the most common complication is suicide. Three things, of course, to note in suicide is that, first one is that, do you have the thought of suicide? So again, suicidal ideation is the term. And what is your plan, of course, to kill yourself? So usually suicidal plans, okay? These two things, of course, or the other one is that suicidal plan, the other one is suicidal gestures. Someone, of course, is that they're trying, of course, to hurt themselves, but intentionally it's not for the purpose of killing themselves, but to ask for help. So those are the communication, of course, that they need, of course, to be captured, and they need some help, okay? So family problems, financial difficulties, divorce, separation, depression, all the negative things, of course, in our life could cause depression, okay? Substance abuse could be at risk, adolescents coping with family-related stressors. That's an example. If they are just entering, of course, adolescence, changing the environment. The most common one is divorce. Because divorce one is a separation of parents. Might be the child will going to move to a new school. So new group of people that the child will adjust. It's very hard because again, that's why if you want to move, of course, the child from the location, make sure it's before they hit, of course, middle school. Because if the child will already, of course, on high school, if you move, on middle school, of course, or high school, if you move, there's a difficulty of them adjusting in the new environment. Another stress for them is that if the parents, of course, stress. The most common reasoning for it is that the child blames himself or herself for possible separation and divorce. Okay? So because of that one, the risk, of course, of suicide will be, of course, very common. That's why I said it is always clinically, of course, safe to ask for their suicidal ideation, suicidal plan, of course, if they are depressed. Okay? Thoughts, suicidal gesture, attempts, suicidal ideation, just a cries for help. Both are key warnings. And again, if you will be asked, what's the most common and most predisposing factor for a child to commit suicide? What's the most common, is the number one, of course, predisposing factor for a child to commit suicide? That's the cause, of course, of it, but predisposing factor. Now, DM, of course, will be, of course, for depression. Well, they could. But the most common one is that, always remember, the highest predisposing factor of suicide will be previous attempts. So anybody, of course, who has previous attempts of suicide is considered a suicide with suicide precaution. Okay, that's number one. Because if they did before, there's likelihood, of course, that they're going to do it again. Although the known cause for that one will be, of course, depression or low self-esteem. Okay? Even if they're going to pose, of course, the bipolar disorder 2, which is manic depressive disorders. Okay? No specific test, so key warnings. Most common one, favorite one, precaution of death. Death, I love you. Death, you are beautiful, and I'm waiting for you to come. If those are the topics of the discussion of the child, be watchful for them. It means, of course, that they're thinking. And another one is that, this is my pen. This is very important to me, and I want you to have it. Okay, that's one thing. That's only one thing that will say, even in adults, giving away priceless possession are one key warnings. Another one is that the child, of course, stay, of course, inside, of course, the home. And one day, all of a sudden, good morning, people inside the house. Mommy, good morning. Daddy, good morning. How are you this morning? Watch out, of course, because this is the most common one. During depressive states, when the child is very low or the self-esteem is low, they don't have the energy to carry out suicide. And watch out, of course, for the lifting of the mood. Okay? Once the mood, of course, changes abruptly, just like, of course, from being so depressed, withdrawn, isolation, and also sudden greeting, of course, everybody else, of course, around the house. Sudden, of course, a very up behavior. Watch out for that one. That is, of course, the time that the child has the energy to carry out suicide. Even in your patients, of course, clinically. So that's the one thing. That's why we put, of course, the patient, of course, in 24-hour checking, of course, for that. Okay? Sudden cheerfulness, that's a big thing. Okay? Why the family takes suicide? This is serious. We lose a lot. The most common segment of the population that we lose to suicide are the teenagers. Okay? Because again, their adaptation, of course, to reality, they don't have enough, of course, way of thinking with it through. They are just, of course, groping with, of course, all these past experiences in order for them to develop their own personality. The question is that one is that you can't expect them to behave this way because the first common question, especially adolescent individuals, will be, who am I? They don't even know who they are yet. They are still in the process, of course, of concretizing, of course, their own persona and who they are. So that's why they are so at risk, of course, of suicide. Intensive long-term severe depression, suicidal thoughts may require hospitalization and close monitoring. Okay? And again, when we speak, of course, of suicide precaution, the most common thing is that when you check on your patient, suicide precaution is that check your patient at random. Do not say every 15 minutes you are there. In 15 minutes, usually, because I will commit suicide today. Okay, my nurse is here in 15 minutes. So today is, of course, this time. After 15 minutes, I will do this one time. But again, if you visit and check, how are you, Miss Jones? Right now, after 2 minutes, oh, Miss Jones, are you okay still there? Anything I can do for you? And right there, oh, what's the pattern of this nurse, of course, coming to me? So instead, of course, of making suicide, they cannot think about it because they cannot predict what your time. Do not be predictable in visiting your clients, especially if they have suicidal precaution. And another one, sharps. Not only sharps, anything that's potential, of course, that could injure themselves. One way for that, ropes. Even, of course, blankets and curtains. We remove them. Mirrors, they can break it open and to kill themselves. Okay? The only thing for that, don't give them the instrument. Okay? To kill themselves. Because it's very common. And be watchful again for the dates that is very, very close to the child. Anniversary of parents, birthdays, Christmas, New Year's, those significant days. Because commonly a depressed individual will carry out suicide in order for them to be memorable, of course, for the special dates for them. Okay? So that's why when you visit, of course, there's one question, of course, to be thrown in psychiatry, of course, for you. How do you visit, how do you check, of course, a patient who is, of course, in suicide precaution? It should be at random basis. Never be predictable. It should be unpredictable. Or else, the patient will going to time you and they're going to commit suicide when in between, of course, your visits or your checks. Yeah? Although right now, they will be viewed in monitors. Because again, right now, we could do that one because, of course, of the fact that they have threat, of course, to kill themselves. Okay? Early warnings of depression. So again, sudden change in behavior, sudden the way they wear clothes, sudden mood changes. These are the things, of course, that you have to watch for, and the parents will be educated, of course, to see, of course, that they have to do. In this counselor, child of course should be evaluated. Okay? It is okay, of course, again, in our society, we encourage that it is okay to take medication for depression. It is better than not asking for help anymore. Because if you have depression and you're not asking for help, the end product for that one is a successful suicide. And watch out, women are so peculiarly successful in suicide. Men, not women. Women is that because of their hormones, I want to kill myself. Oh, no, tomorrow. Okay? You're gonna get a blade. This is the blade. Goodbye, cruel world. Not today. Bad age. Tomorrow. Then I'll go shopping. Well, I'm gonna eat a gallon of ice cream. He loves me. He loves me. Depression, eating, again, either you lose weight, change in a weight is another manifestation of clinical depression. Either you lose more than 10% of your weight in a month, or you gain more than 5%. Okay? So either you eat a lot, or you don't eat a lot. Are both ways, of course, of manifesting, of course, in the depression. So that's why sometimes, Mr. Lear, you have a hard exam. There's the lullaby. So I hate you, Mr. Lear. I hate you not. I hate you. And then, you get it about, I now pass, of course, your exam. So something like that. Because, of course, of your coping. And again, that's how our mind works. Okay? Believe it or not, all of us sometimes suffer down moments. But it doesn't mean, of course, the only question would be, how do we cope with it? Okay? That's why when you become a nurse, always remember 1 month, if it's time for vacation, go for your vacation. Don't burn yourself out. Okay? Because the caregiver taking, of course, of these children because of their limitations, the worst form that will happen is that sometimes people, of course, because of the structure of their families, they want, of course, these children, of course, to be not institutionalized. Because why? Because of the stigma. You allow your child, of course, to be in an institution. Why? You have the responsibility to take care of your child. That is your child. So sometimes parents, of course, will be obliged to take care of this child at home. And the worst thing is that the resources, the side of the patient, of the person, or the primary caregiver will get burned out. That's why in children with special needs, in our facilities, if you are caring for children, it's very common we have respite care. We have guests. Just like that, oh, we have John today, okay? John will be with you for 2 weeks because mommy is going to Hawaii. So from here, of course, I know we'll give some time off for mommy so that again we're going to talk and enjoy here, of course, the facility, and when mommy comes back, then you go back home. That's what we call respite care, and we encourage it to primary caregivers. Because why? Burning out the primary caregivers, especially children of special needs, is the main reason for abuse. Okay? Because this primary caregiver doesn't have any form of expression. You have to give them, the same is true with nurses. If it's time for you to go on vacation, grab the vacation. Do not encash your PTO. Okay, I'm just recommending, enjoy your vacation days. Sometimes you encash it's a lot, isn't it? Child with schizophrenia, 3 important things. Worse than autism, although they are mimicking, of course, just like autism. 3 things that is common in schizophrenia, even in this childhood. First problem will be, one way is that they have problems, of course, with the first thing is that when I lecture about mental health, because this is one of my specialization. Before coming in here, I'm the lecturer, of course, for a university, of course, in the country of Oregon, and my major focus would be psychiatric mental health. Okay, the first question I throw, of course, to my students, and usually, of course, mental health is given, of course, in the last part, of course, the 4th level, the 4th year, okay, of nursing for a 4-year curriculum. My common question is that, welcome to mental health. Are you mentally healthy or are you mentally ill? Most of them, just like yours. Most of them that were going to answer me, of course, is that, of course, we are mentally healthy, that's why I'm nursing. Now, the question for you is that, prove it to me. How did you know, how do you define mental health? That's my common question for them. How do you know that you are mentally healthy?
Depression, probably.
You eat, you poop, you sex? Is it healthy? So 3 things. These are the 3 spheres in order to evaluate, of course, a human behavior, if they are mentally healthy or not. They have to be successful in 3 spheres. First one is that the patient should have, okay, a satisfying, this is the definition of mental health, satisfying interpersonal relationship. It doesn't mean that you are to get married, you have boyfriend. So meaning to say you are satisfied, meaning to say even if you're single, you can have, of course, friends, satisfying interpersonal relationship, meaning to say you can have a successful relationship with other people around you. Because mentally ill people, of course, will be secluded in their own world, and they cannot communicate, of course, and they don't interact with other people around them. So do you have that? Do you have friends? Do you have husband that loves you and you love? Okay? Let us say, of course, with the Fanny. Do you have this one?
Yeah.
Check. Okay. Next one. When you talk to somebody, to me, or to your other people, could you be understood? Or, if you have something, of course, to tell them, do they understand you? Therefore, we call it one is that the next sphere will be communication. You have to have an effective way of communication, and communication will be two forms. The way you understand other people, and the way you express yourself to be understood. Do you do that? It happens to you? No, what it means that, do you tell somebody, of course, and they understand you? And when you tell them, did they understand you?
Yeah.
Check. Okay? Third part is that we have what we call as your reality testing. When we speak of reality testing, do you know, of course, the border between reality and fantasy? Example, okay, do you see Snow White sitting beside you?
No.
So, or, did you smell that?
No.
I smell candle. Somebody might have died in this room. Okay, so again, your capacity to decipher the reality and fantasy, what is real and what you see, of course, is what we call reality testing. Do you know that? Do you know what is real and what is, of course, your fantasy? Check. Therefore, you're mentally healthy. These are the three spheres, of course, to express schizophrenia. That's the first lecture when I present. Because, again, in children, of course, with schizophrenia, or even in adults, is that they don't have any satisfying relationship, even in adults. They are alone. And they cannot maintain, of course, interpersonal relationship with other people. They are secluded. They are withdrawn. They have their own world. Okay? Communication. Schizophrenic individuals, they don't talk, just like autistic children. They might have blah, 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 blah. They have their own words. Just like, example for that one is that they might have, of course, coining some words that it doesn't have meaning to you, but it has meaning for them. Okay? That's one thing. So because of that one is that communication, that it should be, of course, that at least they could present what they believe and what they think, and you could understand them, but these people doesn't know how to present their thing. They are not understood, and they cannot understand what you tell them. Okay? Therefore, there are lack of communication. That's one pattern. That's one sphere. And the worst thing is that reality testing. So the sister, of course, let you work, of course, with the beautiful mind. Okay, so when you see a beautiful mind, that's one way, of course, adapting that one is that his delusion, okay, is fixed. The only thing for that one is that the only way is how you deal with it. The question will be, so what is delusion, what is hallucination, what is illusion? These are the terms, of course, to differentiate that if you possess all these things, it means that you don't have any reality testing because you don't know what is the border of reality and fantasy. Just like when Dr. Nash, of course, was awarded, of course, with the Nobel Prize, he grabbed one student, excuse me, is he real? Because he might, that person who is giving him the award might be, of course, is one of his delusion. So he wants, because of course he knows that he has delusions for these people, for that girl, in the other individual, the father of that his friend, okay? So he doesn't know anymore if this is reality or not. But the way, of course, he could try to compensate is to grab somebody who has a reality testing in check to confirm that indeed, of course, that is a real person beside him. Because if it is his delusion, he will ignore his delusion. Okay? That is reality testing. And schizophrenic individuals has no three of them. Okay? In autism, they might communicate, but they have impaired communication. But somehow, they could do triple tantrums, but at least they could understand them. And they could be trained, again, they could be trained to communicate effectively. But in schizophrenia, they cannot. Because they cannot produce, of course, language that is effective. Okay? That's the great difference, of course, in autism. Although they will make the same pattern of behavior, just like, of course, schizophrenia. Yes, what is your question?
Some kids they live in they imagine and dreams, and not for age level.
That's why, very good. You captured one, because if it's preschool, and my next question, what is the age of the child?
Toddlers and school age. No, school age, sorry. 3 to 6.
3 to 6, then the child is still in preschool. That's, of course, a distinct age.
They live in the
image, of course, for the child to bring. Just like, of course, is that, don't sit there. My friend Anna is sitting there. Imaginary friend. Okay, something like that one. One thing is that one is this very normal, of course, for the age bracket, imaginary playmate. The worst thing is that if there's this age of yours, you still have imaginary playmate. That's not normal anymore.
Yeah,
the child who's 3 to 6 years old, that is expected of them because they have magical thinking. As a parent, we don't think, we know, of course, that, for example, Anna is an imaginary playmate. We don't say, of course, Anna doesn't exist, because that is her imagination, or else we cut, of course, her magical thinking, which is, of course, detrimental to the development of the child. As a parent, the way, of course, you handle them will be, present them with a realistic, of course, stimulation. Grab some people, of course, to play with them. Now, that's no longer Anna. So if they have if their time will be consumed, of course, with playing with a realistic source or a realistic stimulation, just like another child, or give them some toy, that's much better, of course, than rather, of course, we're going to dwell, of course, with the thinking of imaginary playing.
And I was saying, how about dreams? They live in the dream.
What do you mean they live in the dreams? It's
like,
very hypothetical saying. What do you mean by that? They have to wake up and eat.
No, not that dream. That success dream. Some people are like,
what do you mean? That's like, of course, you are sitting right now. You are dreaming, of course, to be, of course, a doctor in nursing.
Yeah.
So without yet, of course, passing the Mr. New Year's exam.
I'm just giving example like that.
Okay. So,
and how about if the childhood they're on diagnosis schizophrenia when they were child?
Schizophrenia is not treatable.
No.
Behavior is only managed. But again, schizophrenia can never be treated.
No, if they don't find it when they were a child and
then it will progress, of course, to adult schizophrenia. It is a different scenario. That's why when you speak of schizophrenia, you have a lot, of course. Is it paranoid schizophrenia? This is the most common one. It is, of course, is it catatonic schizophrenia? Okay. Or we call that one, we call that one, of course, delusion of grandiosity. That was the most common one, or the most common one form, of course, of your schizophrenia.
So is it genetic or?
Yes. The answer is yes.
Oh, is it genetic?
In the blood. Okay. So if you have, of course, descendants, of course, just like me, I might have, of course, I admit that one. I'm not ashamed, okay, with that one. Because of the fact that, again, the only thing, of course, for you to prevent yourself from having mental illness, to accept the fact that you have the tendency, it means you embrace it. Just like with Nash, he accepted the fact that he's having delusion. He got paranoid schizophrenia. Now, because he's aware, he accepts the fact that he embraced around that one. So if you know that you have the tendency, you can check yourself with reality testing.
So can you acquire it in later
no.
when you're an adult?
I don't like yes. One of the most common causes will be that's why we have a childhood schizophrenia that starts early, and we have your adult schizophrenia. It could be caused by, one, giving too much babies, or meaning to say, of course, you give birth, because again, it could lead, of course, to mental illness, especially one of the things that postpartum depression. But again, in drug addiction, damaging, of course, your mental faculties, of course, could lead, of course, to schizophrenia.
So if you're depressed, you can develop
depression, because again, the major depression has, of course, a border, of course, of schizophrenic effect or psychotic effect. Major depression should be, of course, labeled and classified as a mood disorder. But sometimes, if you have depression, you have hallucinations. Sometimes, if you have delusions. That's why, if it's not treated, it could lead, of course, to another thing. It could mimic, of course, a manifestation of a psychotic behavior, just like your schizophrenia. But schizophrenia, the definition is that it should be pervasive, meaning to say consistent, that the symptoms are there for at least 6 months. So if it's only 1 month, so it's not schizophrenia. It might be a brief psychotic episode, and it's gone. You don't need, of course, to treat it.
So can it be managed, and then
can only be managed giving medications like psychotropic medication, which we have a lot, just like, of course, your Thorazine, could manage the behavior, but it doesn't treat the disorder.
So the moment you stop taking the medication, it comes back again?
Why? The purpose of medication is managing the symptoms, controlling the symptoms. It doesn't mean that if you don't have any symptoms because you are taking Thorazine, okay, or Equip or something like that one, it means that you are healed. No. Meaning to say, if you don't have any symptoms, it means that the medication is effective in managing the symptoms. but you are not well educated. Therefore, your maintenance will be, of course, until the end of time. Okay? How much I can talk to you, of course, again, it will give you the mental health. So that's one of my favorite, of course, topic, because I can talk human behavior for a little time, okay? So it's like, it could be organic, it could be, of course, again, when it's organic, it can be brain damage. It could be, of course, genetic. But again, it could be based on symptoms, because when it's organic, it could be, of course, genetic in nature. Okay? Children whose family care suffer from mental health problems may have increased tendency, of course, of psychosis too. Intensive long-term therapy, family counseling, the child care need to maintain the regimen of medication because it prevents them from a breakthrough of symptoms. Substance abuse, just read through, of course, with that one. It's 814, okay? So the medication, again, just decipher, of course, this one. I'm going to give it to you because I think this area, you discuss it with your mental health. Okay? Don't tell me, because again, I'm one, of course, of the people who made, of course, your curriculum for your mental health. So I know what this part of the topic. It is part of the topic, substance abuse. The use of drugs, isn't it? Don't tell them, because you know that one. Then they have a problem with the implementation of the curriculum if it's not carried out. So that's it, common inhalants. The worst thing for the inhalant is that it damages the brain, but always remember, if it is inhalants, it damages the lungs first, before the brain. Clear? So I might have some question with inhalant. The possibilities of the major damage that the child will suffer if they will inhale. Yes, I know it will damage the brain, but first it will destroy the lungs. Okay? Substance abuse COAs. Children of alcoholics are high risk, of course, to become alcoholics because it runs in the genes. That's why, for adults, just to let you know, is that adults who are people who are alcoholics, we have your Alcoholic Anonymous, AA. I am Lirio and I am alcoholic and powerless, of course, is the first step. Okay? People, of course, again, spouses or relatives, of course, of people, or adult children, of course, who alcoholics, have another support groups. We call them, of course, as your Al-Anon. Al-Anon are the spouses and the adult children, of course, of alcoholics. Alcoholics themselves, they have to join AA, Alcoholic Anonymous. Al-Anon is another group, of course, that supports, of course, the spouses, because you know what? A person who is alcoholic, there's already was person in the body is enabler. An enabler is a spouse or a friend that always support, of course, the alcoholism. We have to break the cycle. Okay? And children, just like children of alcoholics, if they are teens, we call this group, of course, support groups as your ALA teen. These are the younger population who are alcoholics, and another one is the children of alcoholics. That's why we call them children of alcoholics. We have, of course, to undergo therapy, because if not, they're also prone to be alcoholics when they reach adulthood. One, because of the genes. Second, it must be supported, of course, by the practice of the parent. Okay? That's the most important thing, and you can read through with that. And then, what else? Nutritional consideration is just simple, of course. One important thing I talked already, passive reinforcement, this is very important. Long-term care. And again, the most highlight is that respite care should be advised to primary caregiver of the special child. Do you get it? Even in elderly, the primary caregiver of the elderly, if they are being, of course, kept, that's why even in elderly population, we sometimes might, if we are working in facilities and nursing homes, we might receive, of course, a respite care for 2 weeks. Because again, the primary caregiver, the daughter, or the husband, or the wife, will gonna go, of course, on vacation. And we encourage her to break the cycle, of course, of abuse. Because that's the most common thing, of course, that, of course, enhance abuse. Okay? Because of course, the patient, the caregiver doesn't have, of course, any form of relaxation. Okay? That's it. Any question? Before you go. Because I will have 50 of you, and the lot of them are selectable that applies.
No.
You're going to change me.
Select and apply how many?
As many as I could. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, thank you for coming. Hopefully you learned something. Continue reading. Yes, any questions?
What's the difference between muscular dystrophy and MS? Do they work with that?
No. MS, of course, multiple sclerosis, if you call it MS, is different. The damage there in muscular dystrophy, the damage is in the muscle. Meaning to say one protein is very important to maintain muscle mass. Dystrophy is missing or absent in children with muscular dystrophy. So their muscles become weak. In MS, in multiple sclerosis, the brain loses, of course, the insulation, the myelin sheath. Which another topic, of course, I don't want to overload you, but if you want to read the brief for that one, you can read through. But I'm going to talk about that one when you reach me in adult nursing.
I was concerned about it because of the respiratory, that it affects your respiratory.
Because, of course, of the fact, of course, MS will get affected one too, but again, this one is more of the muscle problem. Meaning to say the muscle, you lose the content of the muscle because, of course, of this genetic predisposition. MS is a neuromuscular, it's a neuro problem. It's a nervous system problem, which I'm going to talk further with its nervous system in your adult nursing. Okay? Which will be probably in February or March. If you don't have any questions, thank you for coming tonight. See you on Monday. Have a blessed weekend.